80 degrees below zero was no mere temperature anymore. It felt as though countless tiny needles were stabbing outward through every crack in his bones. Each breath he drew filled his lungs with what might as well be crushed shards of glass. Jiang Huai had no idea how long he'd been trapped in this ice crevice, maybe only minutes, maybe an eternity. His consciousness faded little by little. He pressed his palm flat against the ice wall, his knuckles long since numb. Fragments of those 3 hellish years flickered through his mind. The day the extreme cold descended, he had been taking inventory in his logistics company's warehouse. Temperatures plummeted 50 degrees Celsius within 24 hours. The power grid collapsed, cell service vanished, and the entire world froze solid, encased like a piece of amber. He'd scraped together a reputation among the survivors by trading supplies, and that was how he'd met Jiang Huai. Jiang Huai. The man who never spoke a sentence without the word brother woven in. The man who'd built their settlement side by side with him, who'd mapped out a shared future at his side. The man who'd sworn, if there's a bite to eat for me, there's a bite for you. And now that very man stood high above the ice crevice, staring down at him. There was no malice or rage twisted across his face, only faint, dismissive pity. Jiang Huai, without a system, you don't deserve to live in this world. The ground vanished beneath his feet. Then came the fall. Then came this endless cold. Jiang Huai's awareness sank into utter blackness. All fear and rage had burned away to nothing. Only one single thought lingered in his mind. If I could live this life over again, I'd ruin you with every single trade I make. Then even the darkness dissolved. Jiang Huai jolted awake with a gasp. He stared up at the ceiling of his rental apartment, plain white with a water stain in one corner shaped like a lopsided turtle. A ceiling fan whirred overhead. He fixed his gaze on that stain for a full 5 seconds. The room reeked of stifling, living summer. Cicadas shrilled outside the window, car horns blared from the street below, a Douyin video blared from the neighboring flat. Jiang Huai sat up slowly. He made no move to touch his face, pinch his arm, or perform any other test to confirm he wasn't dreaming. He reached for the cell phone resting on his nightstand. The screen lit up. August 12th, 2:15 p.m. 3 push notifications from the weather app popped up. Extreme heat followed by sharp temperature drops recorded across multiple regions. Experts label this normal climate fluctuation. Major temperature plunge expected across northern regions within the next week. Residents advised to prepare cold weather gear. National power load alert raised to orange warning. Jiang Huai's pupils constricted sharply. He remembered these headlines. In his past life, he glanced at them and swiped away without a second thought. He scrolled down his notifications. WeChat was filled with silly memes from coworkers, rental property ads from a realtor, and food delivery discount coupons. Everything looked perfectly ordinary, as if none of the apocalypse had ever come to pass. Jiang Huai opened his photo album. The last snapshot was from last week's company team building barbecue. His logistics colleagues lined up with beer bottles in hand, while he stood at the far edge wearing a hollow, obligatory smile for the camera. Every person in the frame glistened with sweat. He stared at the photo for a long time. These people, accountant Xiao Zhang, driver old Ma, warehouse supervisor Sister Lu, he would never see a single one of them 7 days from now, back in his old life. All he knew was that old Ma had frozen to death halfway home behind the wheel of his truck. Sister Lu had survived until the 2nd year of the apocalypse, dying of sepsis, an illness a single box of antibiotics could have cured. He closed the photo gallery. He had 7 days left. 7 days later, minus 50 degrees Celsius would turn this entire city into a frozen graveyard of ice sculptures. He did not wallow in melancholy, roar out to the heavens, or stand motionless by the window lost in thought for half an hour. Jiang Huai threw off the covers and planted his feet on the floor. He booted up his laptop and logged into his online banking account. Account balance, 24,380 renminbi. His fingers tapped 3 quick strokes across the keyboard as he tallied his liquid assets. Credit card line of credit, 80,000 renminbi, and used balance 0. Huabei revolving credit, 30,000 renminbi limit. Jiabei personal loan, 30,000 renminbi limit. Provident fund, 20,000 renminbi available for withdrawal. Game account listed on second-hand marketplace, estimated resale value 5,000 to 8,000 RMB. Everything convertible to cash would be liquidated within 2 hours. He picked up his phone and made the first call to his real estate agent, terminating the rental lease. He told the agent to keep the security deposit. The agent hesitated, confused. Mr. Jiang, you only paid this month's rent a few days ago, keep it. Second call, to his boss, handing in his resignation. He told the boss he would forfeit his monthly paycheck. There was a 3-second silence on the other end of the line. Jiang Huai, did you land a better job somewhere? Something like that. Third call, to the bank, scheduling an in-person cash withdrawal from his credit card. When the teller asked the purpose of the withdrawal, he replied he had an urgent family emergency. After hanging up, He stood in the middle of the rental flat and scanned every corner. 3 years of apocalyptic memories flashed through his mind, sorting through what goods would skyrocket in value, what would become worthless, and what would be worth more than gold once the extreme cold hit. Jiang Huai grabbed a notepad from the desk and began writing. No suicide note, no rambling reflections, only a lengthy procurement checklist. He filled 3 full pages of paper. Then he pulled on his jacket, pushed open the door, and stepped out into the blazing August sunlight. He hailed a taxi bound for the wholesale market. The car radio blared the weather warning as they drove. Due to abnormal solar activity, extreme temperature drops are expected across northern China over the next week. All residents are urged to prepare sufficient cold-proof supplies. The driver, a 40-something bald man, let out a laugh after listening. A cold snap? Just throw on an extra jacket. Look outside, it's over 30 degrees. Who's buying that temperature drop nonsense? Jiang Huai watched the roadside trees receding past the window without a word. The leaves were still lush green, the sunlight harsh and blinding, pedestrians wandering the streets in short sleeves, some sipping iced milk tea, others mopping sweat from their brows. No one knew the temperature would plummet below -50 degrees in 7 days. No one knew the whole world would be encased in a sheet of ice a month later. No one knew only 3% of humanity would survive above ground by the 3rd year. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Buddy, what are you heading to the wholesale market for? Shopping for supplies. What kind of supplies to rush out this fast? Jiang Huai pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. The reflection of the speeding city stretched across his lenses. Hot air seeped through the window crack, stirring the strands of hair on his forehead. Winter survival gear. The taxi pulled up at the wholesale market entrance. Jiang Huai paid the fare and climbed out of the vehicle. A wall of stifling heat crashed over him. Standing at the market gate, he pulled the 3 folded sheets of A4 paper from his pocket and clutched them tight. The first line had been circled thick in red ink, 500 down comforters. Second line, 5,000 hand warmers. Third line, 200 crates of compressed biscuits. Jiang Huai folded the checklist and stuffed it back into his pocket. His fingers tapped 3 light, steady beats against the seam of his trousers, a long-held habit whenever he began calculating figures. Then he stepped into the market. Inside the wholesale market, the shopkeeper, old Lu, nearly dropped his cigarette the second he laid eyes on Jiang Huai's 3-page list. 500 down comforters? 300 cotton quilts? 5,000 hand warmers, brother. Are you opening a supermarket? Something along those lines. 200 crates of compressed biscuits? I don't have that much stock on hand right now. Give me whatever you have, and source the rest from your suppliers. Old Lu sized up the young man in black-rimmed glasses standing before him. He looked thin, yet his tone held the resolve of someone prepping for war, not stocking a retail shop. Still, he did not press for details. Business had been terrible all year. Any customer clearing out inventory was welcome, no matter their motives. Jiang Huai haggled unlike every other customer. Most buyers simply asked, "Can you cut the price?" He laid out hard data straight away. If I take this entire batch plus matching stock from the 2 shops next door, what's the total volume and average market price? Your quoted rate is 8% above the average, but I'll buy everything from you on one condition: you cover all delivery freight. Old Lu was left stunned by the barrage of precise numbers. What line of work were you in before? Logistics. Fine, I'll cover the shipping costs. While negotiating, Jiang Huai multitasked on his phone. News of the impending cold snap had sparked panic selling of outdoor gear across second-hand platforms. A polar parka originally priced at 3,000 renminbi was listed for only 800. The seller's blurb reading, "Moving house, urgent sale, won't need this even if temperatures drop." The seller had no grasp of what was coming. Jiang Huai purchased the parka instantly, then relisted on a separate marketplace with a new description: professional-grade polar parka. Meteorological Bureau issues extreme cold alert, serious buyers only. He set the asking price at 1,600 renminbi. It sold within 20 minutes. Having cut his teeth in logistics, he possessed an innate sensitivity to commodity pricing trends. He could tell which goods would surge in cost, which would plummet, when to flip stock, and when to hold inventory. No data reports required. 3 completed trades were enough for him to map a full price curve. Over 3 hours, his initial 120,000 renminbi principal expanded exponentially through his chain of resales. Every batch he flipped boosted his purchasing power further. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. A bank SMS alert pinged his phone: 80,000 renminbi withdrawn by a credit card, plus an additional 60,000 renminbi disbursed from his Jiebe loan. Jiang Huai checked his updated balance: 178,000 renminbi. It was more money than he ever owned in his past life. Of course, all cash had turned worthless by the second day of the apocalypse back then. He closed the banking app and headed next door to the hardware wholesale district. 20 diesel space heaters, 3 generators, rolls upon rolls of thermal insulation cotton, and 2,200-liter barrels of diesel. Old Lou trailed behind him coordinating stock, grinning from ear to ear at the massive order. His final stop was the pharmaceutical wholesaler, fever-reducing medicine, frostbite ointment, antibiotics, water purification tablets, all bought by the full crate. When the clerk asked which company he represented, Jiang Huai did not lift his gaze. Personal purchase. One person buying this much medicine? I have a large family to provide for. The clerk glanced at the staggering quantities scrawled on the list. 50 boxes of fever medicine, 100 tubes of frostbite cream, antibiotics ordered by crate. He parted his lips to question further, then thought better of it. Strange customers were everywhere these days. He hauled crate after crate of medication out for loading. As goods were being stacked onto the delivery truck, the driver chewed on a cigarette and muttered under his breath, "All this stuff just for one person?" Jiang Huai pulled 2 packs of cigarettes from his pocket and pressed them into the driver's hands. "Stockpiling for my whole family." The truck rumbled out to the suburbs and pulled up outside an abandoned logistics warehouse. This was Jiang Huai's last major expense, a monthly rent of 3,000 renminbi, 1 month's deposit plus 1 month's rent due up front. The warehouse was tucked away in a remote industrial zone, flanked only by a shuttered auto repair shop and overgrown vacant lots. The nearest residential neighborhood lay 2 kilometers distant. It was perfect for his needs. Unloading the cargo took over an hour, with Jiang Huai personally directing every stack. Diesel barrels lined the far wall, generators were placed deepest indoors to avoid moisture damage, and medical supplies were piled close to the heaters to prevent freezing. The empty warehouse quickly filled wall to wall with stock, leaving only a narrow central walkway clear. Night fell. Jiang Huai wheeled a diesel heater to the center of the warehouse, hooked it up to a generator, and flipped the power switch. The heater hummed to life, warm air spreading steadily through the space. He sat atop an ammunition crate stuffed full of compressed biscuits and pulled out his phone to scroll the news. Temperatures had already dropped 8 degrees over the past 12 hours. Experts populating the comment sections reassured readers this was merely normal climate fluctuation and urged everyone to remain calm. Jiang Huai let out a quiet, hollow laugh. It held no trace of amusement, only bone-deep cold. He powered off his phone. Silence descended over the warehouse, broken only by the low drone of the heater and the wind howling louder and louder outside the walls. Jiang Huai sat alone amid mountains of supplies. The orange glow of the heater glinted faintly off the lenses of his glasses in the darkness. He held out his hands. Red raw abrasions covered his fingertips from hauling cargo all day, and the tender skin at the base of his thumbs already showed the first signs of frostbite. Back in his old life, these frost sores had plagued him every single winter, splitting open, scabbing over, and splitting again, until his hands became nothing more than 2 numb work tools. Not this time. He stared at the neatly stacked supplies stretching into the shadows, 12 diesel barrels lined side by side, 3 generators stacked in the corner, rolls of insulation cotton towering higher than his own height. He recalculated his stock mentally, 200 crates of compressed biscuits, 24 packs per crate, each pack supplying enough calories to sustain 1 adult for 3 days. A single pack per day would feed 1 person for 14 years. But split between 50 survivors? Only 3.5 months. His medicine stock was insufficient, his supply of water purification tablets too thin, and he had yet to source any firearms or ammunition. He flipped to a blank page in his notebook and jotted 3 headings at the top. Weapons. Survivor group. Intelligence. No single person could survive alone. He learned that lesson firsthand in his past life. Lone wanderers had been common in the apocalypse's first year, yet nearly all perished by the second. Few froze or starved to death, most were hunted down and killed by organized survivor bands. The end of the world did not reward the strongest individual. It rewarded those who belonged to a loyal group. A sudden fierce gust of wind battered the warehouse walls, sounding as if some massive beast was tearing through the air far off in the distance. Jiang Huai leaned back against the heater and closed his eyes. He slept his last peaceful night before the apocalypse. Dawn broke. Jiang Huai hauled open the warehouse's iron gate. The sky outside hung a murky yellow-gray. Even in mid-August, white fog billowed from his exhaled breath as soon as he stepped outdoors. His phone's weather readout displayed the current temperature, -3 degrees Celsius. At this exact hour the previous day, it had been 15 degrees. Day 3. When temperatures plummeted below -20 degrees, social media memes shifted from joking about a minor cold snap to shocked exclamations of "Is this real?" People posted photos of bare supermarket shelves, others shared images of 3-hour queues snaking around gas stations. Posts flooded moments feeds asking, "Does anyone know where I can still buy space heaters?" Jiang Huai drove his rented van into the city for one final supply run. The 2 radio hosts argued back and forth about whether the cold warning held merit, One insisted the Meteorological Bureau's alert was credible, the other pointed to a past typhoon warning that had amounted to nothing. Jiang Huai reached out and switched the radio off. He parked at the hardware market entrance and walked into the first shop, uttering 3 short words, "Insulation cotton." The shopkeeper gestured toward a stack of dust-covered rolls in the corner. "That's all I've got left. Everyone's gone crazy buying insulation these past few days. Do the 2 shops next door have any stock remaining? They might have a small amount. Source it all for me. I'll buy every roll." The shopkeeper studied the young man with black-rimmed glasses again. He spoke slowly and calmly, yet every word carried the weight of a final demand. No room for negotiation. "Fine, wait here." The shopkeeper picked up the landline and began calling neighboring stores. Shop 2, 3, 4. He cleared out every hardware shop along the entire street of thermal insulation materials and construction tools, draining his bank balance from 6 figures down to a mere 3 digits. By the time he hauled the last crate of tools into the van, his hands were far too numb to grip the wooden frame. His early frostbite lesions had turned from bright red to bruised purple. The atmosphere on the streets bore no resemblance to 2 days prior. 2 men fought violently over a single barrel of diesel at a gas station, rolling through slush and snow as they choked each other's necks. A ring of onlookers stood surrounding them, none stepping in to break up the brawl, all waiting for the fight to end so they could snatch whatever fuel remained. Outside a supermarket, a middle-aged man waved a torn shopping bag and screamed furiously. "I queued for 3 whole hours. 3 hours. And you tell me there's nothing left?" The shop cowered behind a lowered metal roll shutter, too terrified to reply. Jiang Huai slowed his pace as he passed a pharmacy. A young mother clutched her feverish child at the back of a snaking queue that looped twice around the sidewalk out front. The toddler's cheeks burned bright scarlet, mumbling "mommy" deliriously through cracked lips. The mother wore a thin down jacket, so lightweight one could plainly see only a single sweater underneath. She wrapped the child tight against her chest, her own lips purple and numb from the bitter cold. A pharmacy clerk shouted through a narrow gap in the shutter, "Children's fever medicine is completely sold out, only adult dosages left." The mother did not leave. After waiting 3 hours, she could not bring herself to walk away empty-handed. Jiang Huai's backpack, slung across his chest, held newly purchased children's fever-reducing tablets. He stood frozen at the pharmacy entrance for 2 full seconds. Then he lowered his head and kept walking. In the rearview mirror, the mother's figure shrank smaller and smaller, dissolving into a blurry speck swallowed by the raging snowstorm. By the time Jiang Huai steered the van back to the warehouse through freezing sleet, abandoned broken-down vehicles littered the roadway. A handful of stranded motorists huddled wrapped in quilts inside their cars waiting for rescue, but no help would ever arrive. Jiang Huai carried the last batch of supplies inside and bolted the warehouse door shut. He cranked the diesel heater up to its maximum heat setting. For 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and full night had already fallen, the blizzard had swallowed all sunlight entirely. The weather app on his phone had crashed, cell signals still lingered, yet temperatures were dropping far too rapidly for the program's data models to process accurate readings. Jiang Huai refreshed the page one final time. Current temperature, -37 degrees Celsius. 1 hour later, he unlocked his phone again. The readout showed -46 degrees Celsius. Wind whistled through tiny gaps in the warehouse's metal gate, roaring not like wind at all, but the low, rumbling growl of some colossal wild beast. Muffled thuds echoed outside every so often, power lines snapping under the frost, or more likely, transformers blowing apart. 7 o'clock in the evening. City streetlights began cutting out one by one. This was no ordinary power outage. Entire districts blacked out in swathes, first the eastern quarter, then the western, then neighborhoods far on the horizon. Jiang Huai wrapped himself in a down comforter and stood before the warehouse's only window, watching the whole city sink into total darkness. Back when he'd worked overtime shifts at the logistics warehouse, he'd glance out this same window at night and watch Jiangqing's streetlights stretch unbroken like a winding golden river. That river of light had dried up forever. In his past life, he'd stood at this very window countless times. At first, alone, wrapped in a tattered army coat stripped from a corpse, watching the snow fall heavier and heavier. Later, surrounded by dozens of survivors from their settlement queuing for meals in the mess hall, warm lamplight spilling out the window to cast a small patch of soft gold across the snow. Then alone once more, Zhou Huayuan had led most of the group away, claiming they were off to establish a new outpost. A month later, Jiang Huai learned those people had been sacrificed as disposable scouts to test dangerous territory. He turned away from the window, no longer willing to stare out at the frozen wasteland beyond. 9 o'clock at night. Cell service cut out completely. Jiang Huai set his phone aside. The warehouse echoed only with the low hum of the diesel heater and his own breathing. He sat leaning against stacks of supplies, stretching his hands toward the warmth of the stove. The frostbite on his fingers flushed crimson under the heat stimulation, a stinging itch making him wince. He stared at his hands, the hands of a logistics manager, skilled at drafting reports, building Excel spreadsheets, and calling suppliers. But they lacked toughness. 3 years into the apocalypse in his past life, these same hands had wielded crowbars, touched frozen corpses, and gripped blades. He pulled his hands back and closed his eyes. At that very moment, a line of text materialized dead center in his field of vision. He blinked once. The words remained, embedded directly into his sight, as if a translucent display screen had been plastered across his eyeballs. Host vital signs detected abnormal. Doomsday Exchange System activating. Jiang Huai's eyes flew wide open. The line of text lingered, pale white and semi-transparent, hovering 30 centimeters in front of his face. He reached out to touch it, but his hand passed straight through, grasping nothing. Then a voice resonated inside his mind, bypassing his ears entirely, mechanical and emotionless, yet articulating every syllable with crystal clarity. Activation complete. Welcome back, Jiang Huai. We've waited an entire lifetime for you. It took Jiang Huai a full 10 seconds to confirm he had not lost his mind. He stood and turned in a full circle. The text shifted to follow his gaze, semi-transparent and fixed 10 centimeters below the absolute center of his vision. It never obstructed his line of sight, yet always rested foremost. Doomsday Exchange, he murmured the name, his voice sounding dry in the empty warehouse. The system did not respond to his mutterings, but the interface unfolded before him. 3 layered panels appeared in Jiang Huai's view, no floating holographic projections like those in sci-fi films, instead resembling the inventory management system he had once used at the logistics firm, minimalist, clean, and densely packed with data. First layer, Trade Hall. Countless buy and sell listings scrolled non-stop across the screen, akin to a stock ticker playing at accelerated speed. Buy 100 hand warmers, payment in gold bars. Seeking frostbite ointment. My daughter has a high fever, coordinates XX Road, XX Residential Compound. Selling 5 barrels of diesel, local trades only. Every listing bore the poster's ID and quoted price. Some IDs displayed trade credit scores, most registering 0. Second layer, Mall. A catalog of systems supplied goods covering basic provisions, food, water, clothing, with fixed unlimited stock prices. A drop-down menu held a row of gray locked icons marked Unlock at LV3 and Unlock at LV5. Third layer, Profile. Jiang Huai tapped into it and read his stats. Host ID, Jiang. Trade credit score, none. Current points, 100, new user gift. Daily trade quota, 5 out of 5. System level, LV1. Global online users, 1,037. Jiang Huai sat staring at the panel for 10 minutes. He did not rush into trades or exclaim in shock over what he saw. He examined each function methodically, just as he would test a newly launched logistics management platform, trade rules, transaction fee breakdown, point mechanics, cross-dimensional item delivery protocols. Once both parties confirmed a trade, the system automatically completed interspatial transfer. Sellers paid a 1% transaction fee. As the system's bound host, all fees would be refunded to his account. A faint eyebrow lifted as he read this line. He jotted a note in his notebook, earn 1 commission per trade. 1,000 trades equal a 10 market circulation tax. He then began scrolling through the trade hall listings. Desperation saturated every post. One man traded gold bars for cold medicine, another exchanged his wedding ring for a crate of instant noodles. A lengthy plea read that a family of 5 crammed into an unheated room, their youngest child only 3 years old, begging for aid, no replies beneath it. Jiang Huai scanned each entry with a blank expression. He could not afford to act on sentiment. He had witnessed countless identical scenes in his past life. On the first day of the apocalypse, a man traded a gold bar for a single loaf of bread, only to freeze to death on the streets a month later, the gold still tucked in his pocket. Sympathy was a luxury reserved for those who had already survived. Right now he held merely 100 points and only 5 daily trade slots. Every choice demanded precise calculation. He focused his attention on undervalued supplies. On the first day of the apocalypse, everyone scrambled for food, water, and warm garments, overlooking far more overlooked essentials. Water purification tablets, for instance. One user listed an entire crate for the price of a single pack of cigarettes. The poster clearly failed to grasp their life or death importance. Without filtration equipment, boiled snow retained heavy metal contaminants. Drinking it for a month triggered hair loss, bleeding gums, and organ failure. But Jiang Huai knew their worth. He opened the system mall. Cigarettes cost 10 points per pack under basic goods. He spent all 100 initial points purchasing 10 packs. Next, he traded 5 cigarette packs for the crate of 200 purification tablets. Upon receipt, the tablets materialized out of a flash of pale blue light, clattering onto an ammunition crate before him, utterly tangible. Jiang Huai picked up a tablet to inspect it, sealed in medical-grade moisture-proof aluminum foil. A faint twitch tugged at the corner of his mouth as he continued his operations. He split the 200 tablets into 4 batches of 50 each, posting all 4 listings in the trade hall in exchange for diesel. Less than 2 hours later, every batch sold, netting him 2 barrels of high-octane gasoline. Gasoline was far scarcer than diesel in this frozen wasteland. Diesel engines ran on multiple fuel varieties, while gasoline motors operated with finicky specificity, yet boasted superior maneuverability. He swapped the 2 gasoline barrels for a second-hand generator, its seller noting loud but functional. The poster, a survivor holed up in an abandoned factory, lacked enough points to buy food and spammed the comment section begging for shipment confirmation. Jiang Huai tapped confirm, finalizing the trade. A burst of blue light flashed, and an oil-stained generator thudded onto the concrete floor, shaking the ground beneath it. A system chime sounded. Trade completed. Current points, 320. Jiang Huai dragged over a folding chair and sat beside the generator. 10 packs of cigarettes, 200 purification tablets, 2 gasoline barrels, 1 generator plus 320 leftover points. He had never touched his original 100 starting points. Every subsequent transaction drew value solely from the cigarettes, a zero-cost circular arbitrage tactic known in logistics as a hollow-handed flip. He removed his glasses, exhaled warm breath onto the lenses, and wiped them clean with the hem of his coat. Not bad. In the trade hall's public chat channel, users flooded the feed. That ID who traded cigarettes for water tablets, fool or genius? Jiang? Anyone seen this handle before? Must be a new account. Either absurdly lucky or... Jiang Huai ignored every message. He prepared to close the chat window when a brand new listing refreshed on the screen. Poster ID, Brother Yuan's General Store. Content, buy 5 barrels of diesel, offer 20 above market rate. Self-pickup in Jiangcheng. I won't forget anyone who lends a hand. Posted 3 seconds prior. Jiang Huai's motion of wiping his lenses froze upon seeing the name Brother Yuan. The warehouse hummed only with the heater's drone. He slipped his glasses back on, the ID's glow reflecting off the lenses as his pupils narrowed slightly. Day 4 of the extreme cold. Jiang Huai glanced out the warehouse's small window. The city of Jiangcheng he once knew no longer existed. Every vehicle lining the streets had frozen into ice sculptures, half a meter of snow piled atop their roofs, tires encased solid in ice, windshields coated in frost thick as frosted glass. Scattered figures wrapped in quilts rummaged through dumpsters at a sluggish pace, like robots running low on power. Minus 60 degrees Celsius, with an even harsher wind chill outside. Jiang Huai shut the window and turned to face the mountains of stock filling the warehouse and the ever-lit system panel floating before his eyes. His plan for the day was straightforward: mass-purchase diesel. He posted a buy order: buy unlimited diesel. Payment via points, 5 above market price. A modest 5% markup, nothing more. Too high would draw unwanted attention, especially from the user known as Brother Yuan's General Store. Too low, and no survivor would bother making the trip for negligible extra points. 5% struck the perfect balance, enough to incentivize small-scale sellers to offload stock, yet insufficient to prompt large suppliers to hoard fuel for higher bids later. Less than an hour after posting the order, his first transaction finalized: 2 barrels of diesel. Jiang Huai tapped confirm, and a silent glow of blue light bloomed in the warehouse corner he had designated. 2 heavy oil drums materialized out of thin air, crashing onto the cement floor with a dull thud. He stepped forward and brushed a hand across the metal surface, cold and dust-covered from its previous storage location, genuine fuel. In that moment, he fully accepted he was not trapped inside an endless nightmare. System cross-space delivery was real. Inter-survivor resource exchange was real. It had taken him 3 grueling years to carve out a foothold in the apocalypse during his past life. This time he possessed a trading network linking every living survivor. Jiang Huai rested a palm on the oil barrel, watching the fading blue glow reflect across his glasses, standing motionless for a long stretch of time. He then turned back to continue executing trades. He exhausted all 5 of his daily trade slots within a single day, acquiring 4 barrels of diesel, a batch of antibiotics, a crate of MRE military rations, and a full set of polar combat gear. His point balance climbed from 320 to 860. Jiang Huai manually copied every transaction record into his notebook, a habit forged from his logistics career. Systems could crash, physical ledgers never would. He tore open a military ration pack. Its self-heating packet maintained edible temperature for 40 minutes, a luxury equivalent to fine dining in this frozen hellscape. He took a bite, tasting bland waterlogged hardtack, yet did not frown. Past life experience taught him that by the apocalypse's 3rd year, he would long for this simple ration. The listing scrolling across the trade hall grew increasingly heart-wrenching. Users sold gold bars for medicine, vehicles for food, every possession they owned just to keep their families alive through the month. One posting halted his scrolling entirely. Wanted, 5 able-bodied male laborers. Coordinates, XX mine. Reward, 1,000 points. Laborers. Jiang Huai stared at the listing for 5 full seconds. He knew exactly how such postings ended from his previous life. Those sent to the mine never returned. He hesitated barely a second over the report button before clicking it. System reply, listing removed. It was the only action within his power to take. He could not play savior, trapped at LV1 with under 1,000 points, in a world of minus 60-degree cold. Surviving himself was challenge enough. But the report button remained available, and he would not hesitate to use it again. Night fell. The warehouse heater blazed steadily. Jiang Huai wrapped an extra down quilt over his coat and sat amid the supply stacks sorting inventory logs. His pen dragged across the paper, ink flowing sluggishly from the bitter cold. At that moment, a new buy request refreshed across the panel. ID, drizzle droplet. Content, urgent buy, frostbite ointment. Used my last tube on a patient, 3 more wounded waiting. All my points as payment, 200. Coordinates, basement parking level C, first floor, Jiangxing University Town underground garage. The second Jiang Huai read the ID, his pen slipped from his grasp. It clattered across the cement floor, bouncing twice before coming to rest beside the heater. Gu Xiaoyu. In his past life, this had been her permanent system handle. Drizzle droplet. He remembered clearly. He first met her 2 months into the old apocalypse, gaunt and haggard, her cheeks covered in raw frostbite lesions, yet kneeling steadily to dress a wounded survivor's injuries. Back then she had served as their settlement's sole medic, merely an unfinished medical student. When someone once asked why she chose to stay, she had replied, "There's a man here who keeps ledgers as complex as ancient manuscripts, yet never shortchanges my medical supplies." Jiang Huai had been balancing the settlement's accounts when he heard those words, never lifting his head, but he never forgot them. On the day he died, he never learned what became of Gu Xiaoyu. He did not know if she had survived that brutal winter, who had buried her, or whom she had laid to rest. Jiang Huai knelt to retrieve his pen, then typed a reply into the panel. Drizzle droplet, I have frostbite ointment for you, no points needed. Send your exact location. He stood, donning the brand new, tag-intact polar combat suit, zipping it all the way up to his neck. He stuffed frostbite cream, fever reducers, high-calorie rations, and over a dozen hand warmers into his backpack. The zipper caught. He tugged hard, nearly tearing the pull tab free, before drawing it closed slowly with a deep breath. He pulled open the warehouse door. A blizzard of minus 60-degree wind slammed into him like a solid wall. Cold this extreme was no mere temperature, it was shards of knives, crushed glass, every sharp agony combined. Jiang Huai ducked his chin into the suit's high collar and stepped forward. Behind him, the heater's hum faded, its orange glow shrinking smaller and smaller. The door slammed shut violently in the wind, and the world dissolved into nothing but swirling snow. Jiang Huai pressed the first footprint into the snowdrifts, heading toward the university town. 5 kilometers. It took Jiang Huai over 3 hours to traverse the distance through the minus 60-degree blizzard. Ice crystals whipped up by the wind stung his face like countless tiny blades, and he scraped the layer of ice coating his goggles every few minutes. Jiangxing lay frozen solid. Frost as thick as frosted glass sealed convenience store windows, shelves inside toppled and scattered. He passed a hardware store with its door smashed open, only a handful of screwdrivers left on the racks. 3 survivors rummaged through a supermarket amid the storm. One spotted Jiang Huai. Their eyes locked for a single heartbeat, then the stranger's gaze darted away, fixated on his complete polar gear and bulging backpack. In the apocalypse, intact protective equipment doubled as a weapon. Jiang Huai pressed onward, navigating from memory of his past life, east along Construction Road, crossed the overpass, reached the university town. He paused every 10 minutes to confirm his bearings, digging out his hand-drawn map with numb fingers. He had traveled this identical route once before in his previous life, in reverse. Back then the university district lay in total ruins, and he had only recovered half a crate of expired antibiotics. He arrived as dusk fell. Half the university's main gate lay buried under snow. Jiang Huai circled around to the service compound and located the underground parking entrance, a partially collapsed sunshade sheltering a sloped ramp, its entry blocked by wooden planks and classroom desks. Then he heard coughing suppressed, restrained, a string of successive rasps. Jiang Huai shifted the desks blocking the doorway aside to create a narrow gap and slipped through. The planks rattled and banged in the wind behind him. 30 meters down the sloped ramp, around a bend, light flickered into view. Fluorescent green light. A snapped glow stick jammed into a wall crack cast a faint pale green radiance, illuminating a figure wrapped in a quilt. Gu Xiaoyu stepped forward to greet him. Jiang Huai had seen her countless times in his past life, gaunt, frostbitten, draped in an ill-fitting army surplus coat, but that had been 2 months after the apocalypse fell. This Gu Xiaoyu looked younger, her cheeks bearing far fewer frostbite wounds, yet equally thin. She wore 3 thin sweaters layered beneath a single quilt, her sneakers split open at the toes, gripping the glow stick in one hand. She halted 3 paces away from him, her voice trembling violently, whether from bitter cold or raw emotion he could not tell. "Are you Jiang? You actually came." Jiang Huai removed his goggles, lenses fogging over instantly. "Where are the patients?" Gu Xiaoyu offered no extra words, turning to lead him deeper into the parking garage. The underground structure spanned 3 levels, ramps winding endlessly, emergency exit green signage long dead. Darkness swallowed everything, lit only by the glow stick and their footsteps echoing across concrete. They reached the lowest level, a semi-enclosed enclosure ringed by over a dozen abandoned vehicles, a torn classroom canvas strung overhead to block minor gusts of wind. Jiang Huai laid eyes on 8 students. Some curled across car back seats, covered head to toe in every scrap of clothing they owned. One leaned against a tire, frostbite spreading black and necrotic from his ankles up his calves. Another burned with a high fever, cheeks flushed scarlet, cracked bleeding lips murmuring deliriously. 2 others in marginally better condition knelt beside a small alcohol burner melting snow in a cracked beaker, barely producing a sip of water after hours of heating. Gu Xiaoyu knelt beside the feverish student, slipping an extra coat over his body, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably from cold. That coat was her 3rd thin sweater. Jiang Huai fell silent for 3 full seconds, then set his backpack on the ground and unzipped it. He pulled out the frostbite ointment, fever medicine, unpacked the high-calorie rations and set them somewhere warm to thaw, tore open hand warmer packets and passed them out to every student. He even pulled out the spare thermal liner from his polar suit, intended for his own use, and draped it over the legs of the student with the worst frostbite. Supplies piled steadily across the concrete, far more than Jiang Huai had anticipated packing. The backpack seemed bottomless, and at its very bottom he discovered an unopened bar of chocolate, which he broke into pieces to share with everyone. Gu Xiaoyu stared at the mountain of provisions for a long moment, then turned her head away, but Jiang Huai caught the glisten of tears welling in her eyes. "Distribute them," he said simply. Gu Xiaoyu sniffled, offering no verbal thanks, letting her actions speak volumes. She grabbed the frostbite cream, knelt beside the wounded, twisted off the cap, and moved with the same steady, practiced motions he remembered from his past life. Calm, unwavering. The feverish student mumbled in delirium, repeating over and over that he was freezing. Jiang Huai glanced down at his system panel, point balance reading 860. He scrolled 2 pages through the trade hall and spotted a newly listed sale post. Portable diesel heater, second-hand, loud but functional. 200 points. He tapped confirm. 3 seconds later, a silent burst of blue light ignited in the garage corner, and an oil-stained heater crashed onto the cement floor with a heavy thud. The 2 students melting snow jumped in fright, nearly dropping their beaker. Gu Xiaoyu whirled sharply to stare at Jiang Huai. He walked over and twisted the heater's valve open, warm air flooding the enclosure. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "We have a heater now. Let the feverish patient use it first." Jiang Huai stood aside, assessing the parking garage. Its construction was robust, the university's building standards were high, the underground lot poured with military-grade reinforced concrete, covering roughly 2,000 square meters across 3 expandable levels. Ventilation ducts ran to the surface, partially blocked by snow yet still functional. With added insulation panels, extra heaters, and water purification equipment, this place could evolve into a genuine safe haven. Only one obstacle stood in his way. He opened the system panel and searched for usable materials within the garage, residual fuel left in abandoned car tanks, removable seat cushions for bedding, vehicle batteries linkable into makeshift power sources. What he lacked were critical insulation building materials, extra diesel heaters, and full water filtration kits. Current point balance, 860. Estimated total supply cost required, minimum 2,500. A massive deficit loomed. Jiang Huai prepared to post a bulk buy order on the panel when a private message popped up unannounced. "Brother Jiang, I've noticed you've been purchasing large quantities of construction materials lately. I hold a stockpile of thermal insulation cotton, bulk supply at favorable pricing. If you're interested, shall we meet in person to discuss?" Sender, Brother Yuan's general store. Jiang Huai's gaze locked onto the screen. His fingers tapped 3 slow, deliberate beats against his thigh, then he closed the private message window. There was no rush to act. Jiang Huai closed Zhou Huayuan's private message window and began tallying supplies. Thermal insulation cotton, out of stock in the system mall. He could only source it via the trade hall. Recent transaction price, 15 points per square meter. The parking lot needed 6 air leak vents sealed plus 5 insulated compartments to be built, requiring roughly 150 square meters in total. Cost: 2,250 points. Diesel space heaters, 2 units listed in the trade hall at 300 points each, totaling 600 points. Water purification equipment, basic model available in the system mall for 500 points a set. Total projected cost: 3,350 points. His current balance: 860 points. Shortfall: 2,490 points. He hadn't expected the gap to be this wide, and the calculation made even Jiang Huai want to laugh. It was only the 4th day of the apocalypse, yet someone who'd survived 3 years in this wasteland was stuck scrambling for points. He lifted his gaze and spotted the abandoned vehicles scattered across the parking lot. 12 cars in total. Their fuel tanks held gasoline. He could siphon it out. Traders in the hall were swapping insulation cotton for gasoline. The genuine leather seats could be stripped and listed as refurbishable materials, a niche item with dedicated buyers. Vehicle batteries could be wired in series to build an emergency power supply. Jiang Huai's pen raced across the paper as he drafted a waste recovery checklist. In logistics, this was known as reverse supply chain management, turning end users into suppliers and scrap trash into raw materials. In the apocalypse, it was simply called staying alive. What he did next left Gu Xiaoyu and the handful of still mobile medical students utterly stunned. Squatting beside a discarded SUV, Jiang Huai activated the system's scan function on its fuel tank. The panel popped up a readout: premium 87-grade gasoline, 23 liters remaining, usable quality. He listed the 23 liters on the trade hall immediately. For sale: 23L high-octane gasoline. Seeking thermal insulation building materials in exchange. Points not accepted, barter only. Gasoline was a scarce resource in the apocalypse. Generators ran on diesel, yet certain portable devices only operated on gasoline. Less than 20 minutes after the listing went live, a buyer accepted the trade. A seller with the ID Junk King traded 50 square meters of insulation cotton for the gasoline. When the goods materialized in a pale blue glow, rolls of insulation cotton tumbled onto the ground, and Gu Xiaoyu instinctively stepped backward. Where did all this come from? Traded for something else. Traded how? Gasoline. Where did you get gasoline? Jiang Huai nodded toward the now empty SUV fuel tank. Gu Xiaoyu parted her lips, then clamped them shut. She knelt down and began stripping the car seats without prompting. Jiang Huai shot her a glance. He hadn't asked for her help, yet she'd jumped straight into work unbidden. It had been the same in their past life. She never waited for instructions, her hands moving to fill any need the moment her eyes spotted it. After confirming the trade finalized on the system panel, Jiang Huai checked his daily transaction quota: 5 out of 5 uses, unchanged. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. He'd long wondered whether barter exchanges counted against the daily limit, but this proved the system separated point-based trades and pure item swaps into 2 separate channels, only settlements involving points consumed quota uses. He'd uncovered another loophole in the system rules. Over the next 24 hours, they pulled tires, stripped seats, drained fuel, removed vehicle batteries, and tore out roof liners. Working like a professional auto dismantler, Jiang Huai led the group of medical students in a full scrap vehicle recovery operation across the parking lot. Every component was scanned, photographed, and posted to the trading platform. Car seats were listed as top-grain cowhide, refinable into mattress padding in exchange for 30 square meters of insulation materials. For 12V lead-acid vehicle batteries, wired into an emergency power bank, fetched 1 diesel heater. Tires, tagged as melting-grade rubber, traded for 100 water purification tablets. One student even detached a car door panel and listed it. Jiang Huai glanced at the posting label: interior plastic, recyclable via melting. It sold instantly for a case of compressed biscuits. The student stared at the crate of rations materializing out of thin air, squatting motionless on the ground for a long while to process it. Final transaction. Every last scrap of usable value was wrung from the 12 vehicles. Jiang Huai traded all excess steel frames for another batch of thermal insulation materials. He tallied the actual points spent: 860, all used to purchase the water purifier and basic consumables from the system mall. The equivalent value of goods generated through his reverse supply chain workaround hovered around 3,000 points. Not only had he broken even, his point balance climbed to 1,220. Then the whole group banded together to begin construction. All 6 ventilation vents were sealed tight with insulation cotton, with 1 main duct routed up to the 2nd floor. 5 insulated compartments were framed using stripped car doors and repurposed thermal materials, unsightly, but efficiently retaining heat. 3 diesel heaters were positioned evenly across key zones of the 3-level space. The water purifier was plumbed into the parking lot's original fire water tank. Jiang Huai struggled for ages to twist open the frozen valve, and murky yellow water flowed out. After passing through the purifier, it ran clear. 8 vehicle batteries wired in series formed an emergency power bank, too weak to power the heaters, yet sufficient for lighting and charging communication devices. 24 hours later, Jiang Huai stood in the center of the parking lot and twisted the ignition switch on the final heater. Warm air surged through the vents. All 3 heaters hummed to life simultaneously, circulating heat throughout the 3 levels via the ventilation ducts. The thermometer's readout ticked steadily before his eyes. -38 degrees, -30, -15, -5, to above 0. It finally settled at 10 degrees Celsius. 10 degrees above freezing. In the apocalypse, that was a heavenly temperature. The students clustered around the heaters, some holding their hands out to warm them, some boiling hot water, others curled up on mattresses fashioned from car seats fast asleep, faces relaxed as if dreaming. For the first time, they could rest properly. Gu Xiaoyu walked over and sat beside him, handing him a mug of freshly boiled water repurposed from a clean measuring cup. Jiang Huai took it, not glancing at the cup, but at her instead. Her cheeks were flushed, likely from hauling construction materials earlier, or simply the rising warmth from the heaters. Brother Jiang. Who exactly are you? Jiang Huai took a sip of hot water. A small chip lined the rim of the measuring cup, leaking a thin stream as he drank. He rotated the cup to shift the chip away, stopping the drip, then replied, "Just someone who knows how to negotiate trades." Gu Xiaoyu froze for a beat, then burst out laughing. It was the first laugh she'd let out since the extreme cold descended, and Jiang Huai briefly wondered if he'd imagined it. After chuckling, Gu Xiaoyu stood to check on the students' quarters. Jiang Huai set the measuring cup aside to take inventory of supplies, yet his pen froze mid-motion. 1 crate of compressed biscuits was missing. Jiang Huai told Gu Xiaoyu about the discrepancy. "A full crate of compressed rations is gone." Gu Xiaoyu fell silent, then questioned every student present. The biscuits hadn't vanished that day. They'd gone missing 2 days prior, before Jiang Huai arrived. "There's a boy named Qi Yuan," Gu Xiaoyu said, her tone complicated as she struggled to frame her thoughts on him. "He left before you got here, saying he was going out to scavenge supplies. We waited 3 full days, but he never came back." Rumors swirled. Some claimed he'd abandoned the group entirely, others that he'd stolen provisions and fled. Jiang Huai walked to the empty sleeping nook in the parking lot's corner, a stack of old clothes folded as a pillow, a half-ripped yoga mat spread across the concrete, and a tattered backpack left beside it. The pack was worn thin, its zipper broken, one shoulder strap reattached with shoelaces. Jiang Huai unzipped it. Inside lay only a folding knife, half a box of matches, and a photograph. The picture showed a middle-aged woman, the print crumpled as if soaked then repeatedly handled. A single character was scrawled on the back, "Mom." Jiang Huai slid the photo back into the backpack. He didn't run away. Gu Xiaoyu lifted her head. Anyone fleeing would take a photo of their mother with them. Deep midnight, 2 days later. Jiang Huai sat in the innermost corner of the parking lot beside the stockpile of supplies. No lights were lit, only the faint glow of his system panel reflected off his glasses. He sorted through trade logs while waiting. A figure slipped silently through the maintenance corridor of the parking lot. Their footsteps barely made a sound across the glass-strewn concrete. Dodging empty crates stacked around the outer perimeter of the supply pile, they crept straight toward the cache of high-value goods, reaching out for a crate of canned food. A voice echoed from the shadows beside the diesel heater. "Not enough biscuits to fill your stomach?" The intruder stiffened, then reacted with startling speed. Instead of surrendering, they sprinted toward the maintenance exit, weaving nimbly through the cluttered parking lot like an eel. But Jiang Huai had blocked the sole passage in advance with a pile of stripped car door panels. The figure crashed into the barrier with a loud clang, tumbling to the ground alongside the metal doors. Jiang Huai stepped forward, picking up the fallen can of food and staring down at the person sprawled beneath him. A teenage boy, not yet 20. Gaunt, his cheekbones sharply protruding, matted hair, lips purple with frost. He lay crumpled on the ground, yet no fear showed in his eyes, only quiet resignation. He squeezed his eyelids shut. "I didn't steal anything else. Only the biscuits. My mom's in a nursing home on the east side of the city. She's diabetic, she needs food to survive. The nursing home's front doors froze shut when I went back. I couldn't get inside. What's left of the nursing home?" The boy opened his eyes, his reflection mirrored on the lenses of Jiang Huai's glasses. "Nothing. When I arrived, the doors were frozen solid." "How did you survive these past 3 days?" "There's an underground heating pipeline beside the nursing home." Qi Yuan sniffled. It cracked, but residual warmth seeped out. "I huddled inside the pipe for 3 days, venturing out during daylight to scavenge, then crawling back at night. The pipe went cold eventually, so I had no choice but to return here." Jiang Huai studied him for a long time. His gaze wasn't judgmental, It was calculating, weighing the boy's speed, reflexes, stealth capabilities, and the stamina that had let him survive 3 days wandering through blizzards. He knelt to meet the teen's eye level and held out the can of food. Eat. The boy stared at him in disbelief. Finish this can, and you work as my errand runner. Refuse. Jiang Huai nodded toward the pitch-black outdoors. It's minus 60 degrees out there. Your call. The boy locked eyes with Jiang Huai, watching streams of data flicker across his pupils. He snatched the can, tearing the metal lid open with his teeth, revealing frozen solid luncheon meat inside. He paid no mind, devouring it ravenously. I'll follow you. What's your name? Qi Yuan. My mom calls me Xiao Qi. The neighbors out on the streets all call me a Qi. The next morning, Jiang Huai redeemed a thick thermal coat and a pair of anti-slip boots from the System Mall, leaving them on a Qi's sleeping mat. A Qi picked up the boots first, running his palm over the textured slip-resistant soles. He glanced up at Jiang Huai without a word, yet that night Gu Xiaoyu spotted him washing his tattered old coat and folding it neatly beside Jiang Huai's supply stockpile, trading his worn garment as partial payment for the new winter gear. A Qi headed out to scout the city that day. Jiang Huai didn't press him for details of his route. When he returned, he handed over a hand-drawn map of eastern Jiangcheng. Drawn from a first-person ground perspective rather than standard scaled cartography, it marked 12 locations: supermarkets, pharmacies, gas stations, hardware stores, 2 warehouse entrances half buried under snow, and an industrial district intersection that appeared cleared of debris. 3 lines of notes labeled each site: occupied/abandoned/hazardous. His handwriting was hideous, scrawled like crabs dipped in ink crawling across the paper, yet the map held far more granular intelligence than any recon document Jiang Huai had seen in his past life. Jiang Huai stared at it for 3 seconds. Your handwriting's illegible. Redraw it. A Qi, all right. Gu Xiaoyu rolled her eyes and stifled a laugh beside them. Jiang Huai pointed to 3 locations circled in red ink on the map. These 3 are marked occupied. Who's holed up there? The middle one's a gang of thugs, best to avoid them. The northern spot's a lone elderly man who keeps to himself and refuses contact with anyone. The southern site, a Qi scratched the tip of his nose. I can't be certain. Vehicles come and go. Looks like a transport crew. Their trucks are beat-up junk, though. I don't think they have access to the system. Jiang Huai nodded, then opened the trade platform to post targeted by orders aligned with the Qi's scouted locations: grain and oil near the supermarket, fuel at the gas station, mechanical parts in the industrial zone. He locked in supply sources for each location in advance. But when he input keywords for the 3rd site, heavy machinery at the hardware store, the system flagged an existing buyer. ID, Brother Yuan's General Goods. Purchase order posted 3 hours prior. Jiang Huai's finger hovered over the panel. 3 hours ago, a Qi hadn't even finished drawing the map, yet Zhou Huayuan had already listed his buy request. That meant Zhou Huayuan sourced intelligence offline through ground scouting, operating an independent spy network separate from public platform data. Jiang Huai jotted a note in his notebook: competitive intelligence method, offline reconnaissance. Response speed, faster than public trade board data. Deduction, permanent informants stationed in a minimum of 3 urban districts. He closed the notebook. A Qi leaned over to peek at the page. Brother Huai, who's this Brother Yuan's General Goods? Jiang Huai pushed his glasses up. An old acquaintance. Jiang Huai never replied to Zhou Huayuan's private message. He minimized the system panel down to a translucent tiny glowing dot tucked in the corner of his vision, then stepped out of the command room. Inside the base, a Qi was in the mess hall teaching several students how to braid rope from discarded vehicle seatbelts. The finished cords were unsightly yet sturdy, usable for securing cargo, hanging laundry, or makeshift tourniquets in emergencies. As he wove, a Qi bragged about tying a dozen chickens with a single rope back when he lived on the streets, making the students chuckle. Gu Xiaoyu was in the medical base sorting pharmaceutical stock. She rearranged antibiotics, fever reducers, and frostbite ointments by purpose and expiration date, taping handwritten labels to each box. Her penmanship was leagues neater than a Qi's. Jiang Huai glanced through the doorway as he passed, his gaze lingering briefly on the bottom shelf of the medicine cabinet. Only 4 tubes of frostbite cream remained. He said nothing, but logged the shortage on his system panel. He returned to his desk and pulled the panel back into full view. It was time to thoroughly analyze Zhou Huayuan's operations. Jiang Huai spent 2 hours scrolling through every public trade record under Brother Yuan's General Goods. The panel streamed each entry sequentially: transaction time, supply category, counterparty ID, final settlement price. To others, it was a wall of tedious numbers. To Jiang Huai, they were his rival's digital fingerprints. Zhou Huayuan never engaged in open bidding wars. His trading tactic followed a fixed pattern. Upon spotting a public buy listing, he avoided public price haggling and sent a private message instead. His opening line never varied: "Brother, I've got exactly what you're looking for." He would quote a price marginally higher than market average, while throwing in an extra 5% volume free of charge. The line, "Consider the extra a gift from me," appeared repeatedly in the comment sections of his completed trades, recognizable even without reading them. Jiang Huai noted in his notebook, "Persona-based trader. Core advantage, robust personal connection network. Weakness, each transaction carries a 5 to 10 cost premium over market rates." Another consistent pattern emerged. Zhou Huaiyuan's peak activity window ran from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Cross-referencing his transaction timestamps revealed over 60% of his trades fell within these hours. Nighttime operations implied his base was occupied with other critical tasks during daylight, recruiting survivors, scouting locations, or Jiang Huai's finger paused on the screen, rolling out his mutual aid program. Most critically, Zhou Huaiyuan had bulk purchased 3 materials in concentrated orders over the past week: diesel fuel, thermal insulation panels, and steel rebar. The first 2 were universal high-value apocalypse commodities. Steel rebar, however, was structural construction material. Jiang Huai scribbled another line in his notebook. He is expanding his base. Likely large-scale construction. Estimated building footage from material volume, minimum 2,000 square meters. He closed Zhou Huaiyuan's trade logs and pulled up a new interface. This was a new development. Zhou Huaiyuan had launched a scheme on the platform dubbed the Mutual Aid Program. Every survivor who joined contributed supplies equivalent to 5 points each week, in exchange for priority bidding rights in the auction house system, regular material aid promised by Brother Yuan, and access to an exclusive internal trade channel visible only to program members. The promotional copy was stirringly persuasive. "In this end times, no one can survive until next spring alone. Brother Yuan doesn't do business with everyone, we only discuss how to stay alive together." 30-some comments line the reply section already. Signed up. "Brother Yuan is a good man. Count me in, coordinates north of Jiangcheng." Jiang Huai skimmed through the rules and pushed the system panel aside. He took off his glasses, exhaled warm breath over the lenses, and wiped them with the hem of his coat. After slipping them back on, he uttered 2 cold words: "Ponzi scheme." Gu Xiaoyu happened to walk by carrying a mug of hot water intended for Jiang Huai and caught the phrase. What scheme?" "A Ponzi scheme. Supplies from new recruits are used to pay out benefits to earlier participants. As long as fresh sign-ups keep pouring in, the fraud stays hidden on paper." Jiang Huai took the mug and adjusted his glasses. "But new members won't keep coming forever. Once the recruitment growth can't keep up with the promised returns, the whole thing collapses." "Are you going to expose him?" "No." Jiang Huai took a slow sip of water. "It's pointless right now. Only 30 people or so are involved. The operation's too small to do him any real damage if it crashes. Let him expand it first. Once it balloons, one funding gap will bring the entire structure tumbling down." Gu Xiaoyu studied his expression. There was no malicious glee of someone plotting to destroy a rival, only quiet detachment, as if watching an event whose outcome he already knew. She swallowed the questions on her lips and turned back toward the medical ward. Jiang Huai added a new monitoring keyword to his system intelligence tracker, Mutual Aid Program. The panel flickered, signaling a message from a Chi, who was out scouting locations and relaying updates over a walkie-talkie. "Brother Huai, I saw something interesting in the southern district. Brother Yuan's men, I recognize their modified pickup truck with steel plates welded to the cargo bed, are canvassing the whole south side, stopping everyone to ask if they want to join the Mutual Aid Program. One old man cursed them to hell, and they just left without laying a hand on him." Jiang Huai's brows twitched slightly. Their restraint meant Zhou Huaiyuan was still carefully maintaining his benevolent public image. 11 p.m. Jiang Huai sat alone in the command room, the glow of the system panel reflecting off his spectacle lenses. He pulled up every single one of Zhou Huaiyuan's transaction records again, this time focusing on his supply chain. One supplier ID appeared far more frequently than any other: Old Wang's General Store. The shop sold Brother Yuan a messy assortment of goods, food, clothing, small quantities of construction materials. Jiang Huai pulled up Old Wang's full trade history. Monthly turnover barely topped 1,000 points. Yet this account had been registered on the second day of the apocalypse, earlier even than Zhou Huaiyuan's main profile. Not a random civilian, an alternate account. Jiang Huai jotted a line in his notebook. Hypothesis: Zhou Huaiyuan runs at least 2 alternate accounts to inflate transaction volume and polish his reputation. One is Old Wang's General Store, supply side. A second demand side alt remains undiscovered. He closed the notebook when Gu Xiaoyu called over from the medical ward. "Brother Jiang, we've got a fever patient, 39 degrees Celsius. Jiang Huai stood, tucked the notebook inside his combat uniform, and shut down the system panel. He paused at the ward doorway. Gu Xiaoyu was calmly taking a student's temperature, her movement steady, exactly as he remembered them from his past life. She glanced up at him. "What are you staring at?" "Grab the fever medicine." He turned to fetch it. Dawn broke as Achi stumbled back indoors. He skipped the walkie-talkie this time and sprinted straight into the command room, covered head to toe in snow with frost crusted on his eyebrows, a triumphant grin plastered across his face. Brother Huai. Brother Yuan's crew are asking all over the southern district about one specific thing. What's that? Underground civil air defense shelters, the kind built to hold thousands. They're offering 1,000 points reward to anyone who hands over coordinates. Jiang Huai tapped 3 slow beats on the tabletop with his fingertips. Are they still searching? They just moved on to canvassing the northern district. Jiang Huai removed his glasses and massaged the bridge of his nose. Zhou Huayuan was hunting for civil air defense bunkers. The sprawling shelter network beneath Jiangqing had been uncovered by Zhou Huayuan in his past life, using blueprints obtained from Old Zhao. This timeline, Old Zhao had yet to surface and the schematics were still safely in Jiang Huayuan's possession, but Zhou Huayuan would keep searching regardless. He slid his glasses back on and reactivated the system panel. Achi. Here. Head north tomorrow. Mark every air defense shelter entrance you can find, big or small. Scout the interiors if entry is possible, otherwise log their exact locations. Be back before nightfall. Achi nodded and turned to leave, only for Jiang Huai to call out after him. Stay safe out there. Achi flashed a lopsided grin, his 2 front teeth crooked under the glow of the space heater. Brother Huai, blizzards can't catch up to me once I start running. As he bolted out, he swiped a canned food ration from the cafeteria counter on his way past. Jiang Huai made no move to stop him. Jiang Huai typed Civil Air Defense Shelter into the trade platform's search bar. 17 results popped up. 15 were by listings, by Jiangcheng bunker coordinates, top points offered, seeking underground refuge locations, negotiable points. Anyone know where Jiangcheng's air raid shelters are? Most threads sat with 0 replies. 2 listings had been reported for fraudulent information to scam points. Then his gaze landed on the very last entry. It was a sell order, not a buy request. For sale. Jiangcheng Civil Air Defense Shelter Structural Blueprints. Price, 100 points. Note, only selling to those with genuine need. Poster ID, Old Man Zhao. Posted, Day 3 of the Apocalypse. Transaction status, unsold. Views, 12. Comments, none. No one had paid the listing any mind. On the 3rd day after the world collapsed, every survivor was scrambling for food, warm supplies, anything that could extend their fleeting survival by a single day. No one would waste 100 points on a stack of paper schematics. What good were drawings when you were starving? But Jiang Huai saw it for what it was, a screening filter. The seller was vetting potential buyers. Jiang Huai clicked purchase and attached an 8-word message instead of a lengthy introduction or request for alliance. Not buying drawings. Want to see the site? 3 hours later, Old Zhao sent over an address, the abandoned West City Community Service Center, their arranged meeting spot. The actual shelter entrance lay elsewhere. Jiang Huai went alone. He brought 2 items, a crate of canned rations and a portable diesel space heater. Achi had offered to tag along, but he declined. Gu Xiaoyu asked if he needed a firearm, and he'd refused that too. He pulled on his polar combat suit, pushed open the base's blast door, and stepped out into the raging blizzard. The community service center sat at the end of a frozen alley, its front door half buried under snowdrifts. Jiang Huai shouldered it open. A thick acrid stench of incomplete diesel combustion hit him the second he stepped inside, coming from the basement. He halted at the stairwell landing. Master Zhao. My name's Jiang Huai. Silence followed, then a faint click of a deadbolt turning. You came alone? The voice was dry and raspy, as if its speaker hadn't spoken to another human in months. Just me. Why no backup? You wouldn't unlock the door if I brought a crowd. The door creaked open. Old Zhao Zhangwo stood at the basement threshold, nearing 50, gaunt, wrapped in a faded military overcoat. His fingers were bright red with cold, cracked frostbite scabs crusted over his knuckles. Behind him stretched a roughly 20-square-meter basement cluttered with odds and ends, cardboard crates, rusted filing cabinets, rolls of yellowed engineering blueprints. A red-hot diesel heater hummed in the corner, stacked beside 7 or 8 full fuel drums. The space was cramped yet immaculately organized, a storage method mirroring Jiang Huai's own warehouse stockpiling system. Jiang Huai ignored the clutter. He unslung the portable heater from his backpack and flipped the ignition switch. Warm air flooded the basement, and Old Zhao's atoms apple-bobbed once. That site you referenced. The Civil Air Defense Shelter. The blueprints are just a token to get my foot in the door. I need full access inside. Old Zhao stared him dead in the eyes for 5 full seconds, before bending to retrieve a manila folder from the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside lay 3 keys bound together with a rubber band, 1 brass, 1 iron, 1 magnetic access card. His hands trembled as he handed the folder over, not from the bitter cold. Follow me. The shelter entrance was hidden in the backyard of an abandoned factory. Old Zhao unlatched a rusted steel gate, revealing a long downward ramp stretching at least 40 to 50 meters. Emergency lights line the walls every 10 meters, long since cut off from power. Old Zhao led the way forward with a flashlight, their footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. The ramp finally leveled out at a reinforced blast door, which Old Zhao heaved open. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. 3 underground floors. Standing on the first level and glancing downward, the scale of the bunker stretched far beyond his immediate perception. Thick ventilation ducts crisscrossed the ceiling, coated in a thin layer of ice. The floor was laid with military-grade reinforced concrete. Faded pre-freeze emergency evacuation maps still clung to the walls, their edges curled and peeling. The second floor functioned as a storage zone lined with empty heavy-duty industrial shelving racks built to bear tons of weight. Deep in the third and lowest level sat an underground well. When Old Zhao lifted the manhole cover, Jiang Huai shone his flashlight down to glint off the still water surface. Old Zhao stood beside him, his voice even drier than it had been back in the basement. I was the site manager here before the extreme cold hit. This used to be the Jiangcheng Civil Air Defense Administration office. I've guarded this place alone since the apocalypse broke out. He paused. I couldn't bear to see it seized and wrecked by looters. Has anyone else tried to break in? 2 groups. The first smashed the ground floor entry door but couldn't breach the blast door. It's built to withstand direct explosive impact. The second lot wandered around the yard, couldn't find the ramp leading underground, wrote it off as a derelict warehouse and left. Old Zhao hesitated. Later I hauled scrap machinery and rusted iron from the factory backyard to pile over the entrance. The more it looks like a worthless ruin, the fewer people come poking around. For 2 years, no one but me has known what lies beneath this yard. Jiang Huai circled all 3 levels, running system scans across every section as he walked. Each scan logged new data onto his panel. Ventilation system, functional, requires de-icing. Well water, potable, needs purification equipment. Power, backup generator reparable, spare parts specifications logged. He uploaded all scan results into the system database and halted at the far end of the 3rd floor. He turned to face Old Zhao, who still lingered by the blast door, the beam of his flashlight wavering faintly. You don't have to guard it anymore. Jiang Huai spoke firmly. Show me the layout, and I'll oversee all renovations. Old Zhao's Adam's apple bobbed violently. He parted his lips, but no sound came out, then pressed the manila folder into Jiang Huai's hands. Beyond the set of keys, it held a thick stack of hand-drawn fortification schematics marking every ventilation pipeline, load-bearing wall, and emergency secondary exit. The instant Jiang Huai flipped open the first page, a system assessment notification popped up. Large-scale underground fortification detected, eligible for conversion into base module. Estimated renovation cost, 5,000 points. Maximum post-renovation occupancy, 200 survivors. Construction duration, 72 real-time hours. He checked his point balance, 3,200. Over the past few days, he'd flipped short-term trades on the platform, slowly building his reserves up from an initial 1,220. He was 1,800 points short of the target. Old Zhao pressed the basement key into his palm as well. His hands shook again, though this time it had nothing to do with freezing temperatures. It was the relief of a man who'd borne a crushing burden alone for far too long, finally passing the weight to someone capable of sharing it. Jiang Huai accepted the keyring. Without warning, a chi poked his head out from the shadows of the 3rd floor corridor. He must have tailed them despite Jiang Huai telling him to stay behind. Brother Huai, we've got ourselves a new home. Jiang Huai paid him no mind, gazing out over the 5,000 square meter underground complex stretching behind the blast door. A new home. He tucked the keys safely in his pocket. This is our starting line. Night had fallen by the time they returned to the university town parking lot. Jiang Huai planned to relocate everyone to the air defense shelter, but the renovation system required an upfront point investment, and he still needed another 1,800 points, which he intended to farm that very night. When Gu Xiaoyu called him over abruptly. Jiang Huai, look at this. A full-platform broadcast banner blazed across the public channel in glowing gold font, distinct from the plain white text of ordinary trade listings. Every single online user, all 2,147 survivors, had received the notification simultaneously. Official auction announcement from Brother Yuan, holder of the Apocalypse Auction House system. Grand auction to commence in 3 days. Featured lot, 1 fully intact snow-terrain armored vehicle. Starting bid, 5,000 points. Auction venue, system virtual auction hall. All survivors welcome to participate in bidding. Brother Yuan will have fine tea prepared awaiting your arrival. The comment section erupted instantly. Spammers flooded replies with Brother Yuan is unstoppable. Others asked for descriptions of the snow-armored vehicle, and several users had already thrown out preliminary bid offers. Within 10 minutes of the broadcast posting, total platform online users surged from 2,100 to 2,600. Gu Xiaoyu finished reading the full notice and turned to Jiang Huai. Are you going to bid on the vehicle? Jiang Huai closed the system panel without hesitation. No. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, the orange glow of the diesel heater in the corner reflecting off the lenses, then delivered the rest of his thought flatly. I'm going to intercept the whole deal before it happens. The buzz of the full platform broadcast still lingered across every channel. Jiang Huai stood and walked to a concrete pillar at the parking lot's edge, tore off an old inventory sheet, and scribbled 3 core tasks on the blank reverse side. 3 objectives: farm the missing 1,800 points to hit the 5,000 renovation threshold. Trace the armored vehicle's original supply source. Carry out all operations without alerting Zhou Weiyuan. Gu Xiaoyu brought over another mug of hot water, its chipped enamel coating exposing bare black metal beneath. Which of these 3 jobs is the hardest? None of them qualify as hard. Jiang Huai took the mug. They just all have to run simultaneously. He pulled up the system panel, splitting the screen into 4 parallel windows: Trade Hall, Point Balance Ledger, Transaction History, and Supply Material Database, plus a 5th note-taking tab. Current point balance, 3,200. Shortfall, 1,800. Over 3,000 listings crowded the Trade Hall feed. Instead of scrolling one by one, he set strict filtering parameters: exclude food and water, thin profit margins, exclude firearms, low liquidity, exclude inflated trending goods, already cornered by sharp-eyed speculators. He targeted overlooked, undervalued stock written off as useless junk. 37 filtered results loaded. The 4th listing from the bottom had sat untouched for 6 full days: bulk technical textbook collection, mechanical, civil engineering, medical, electrical engineering, over 400 volumes total. Asking price, 2 crates of compressed biscuits. Note, too heavy to haul alone. Buyer must self-collect. Poster ID, Book Nerd. Views, 8. 1 lone comment reading: can these even be burned for firewood? Books were worthless to most survivors in the apocalypse, but Jiang Huai's background as a logistics manager taught him an item's value lay not in its physical form, but in matching it to someone with desperate need. He clicked purchase and sent a counteroffer: 2 crates of biscuits plus 1 crate of canned rations. I'll take the entire collection. Book Nerd replied instantly: brother, you're actually serious? Basement of East City Library, are you really coming? I'll be there tomorrow. Jiang Huai brought a chi along to retrieve the haul. The library basement door had frozen shut solid, requiring 3 heavy blows from a pry bar to crack open. Book Nerd, a gaunt 50-something man with sharp cheekbones wrapped in 3 threadbare blankets, eyed the canned food first, swallowing hard, then gestured at the towering stacks of books. Take them all. Every last volume. They hauled the 400-plus textbooks out in 2 separate trips. A chi leaned against the truck door gasping for breath. Brother Huai, are we gonna burn these for warmth? We're selling them. Who'd buy a pile of books? People who need the knowledge inside. Back at the parking lot, Jiang Huai spent an hour sorting the texts into 6 categorized skill bundles: basic wilderness survival, mechanical repair, emergency medical aid, electrical engineering, civil construction, agricultural cultivation. He attached handwritten catalogs and practical usage guides to each bundle before listing them in the trade hall. Individual bundle price, 500 points, full 6 bundle bulk package, 2,500 points. His listing title read, Skill Mastery Bundles. Practical trades hold more lasting value than bullets in the end times. 5 minutes after posting, the first comment rolled in: lunatic, 500 points for a stack of books. The 3rd inquiry arrived from Old Wang of South Mountain Camp, leader of a medium-sized survivor settlement. I'll take the survival and mechanical bundles. Can you cut the price? Jiang Huai countered, 900 points for both, plus a free supplementary diesel engine repair guide thrown in. 5 minutes later, the order marked complete. Then a 2nd settlement leader placed an order, followed by a 3rd. A middle-aged man governing 200 survivors on Ningqing's outskirts purchased 4 bundles outright. Jiang Huai had reviewed his trade records. He'd amassed a 5-figure point fortune early on reselling hoarded pharmaceutical supplies. His message read, the young folks in my camp have no one to teach them practical skills. These manuals will at least let them start learning hands-on trades. All 6 skill bundles sold out within 48 hours for a combined total of 2,600 points. His total procurement cost had barely topped 200 points, yielding a profit margin exceeding 1,000%. Achi squatted against the wall scrolling through the finalized transaction logs, whistling softly. Brother Huai, even highway robberies more legally complicated than your trades. Jiang Huai checked his updated balance, 5,800 points. He'd blown past the 5,000-point renovation requirement with surplus to spare. Jiang Huai did not pause to celebrate. He moved straight on to his 2nd task, The system had spent a full day and a half backtracking data, sifting through mountains of records to pull up 11 entries related to armored vehicles. 10 were idle chat. The 11th was a completed transaction dated the 7th day of the extreme cold. Seller, Old Jiang from the northeast. Listing, 30 barrels of military-grade diesel. Buyer, Brother Yuan's general store. Jiang Huai had bought diesel from Old Jiang. And Old Jiang had far more than just fuel in stock. Jiang Huai pulled up Old Jiang's full transaction log, a dozen entries in total, all sales of military supplies, diesel, army parkas, compressed biscuits. He only sold, never purchased, and every single item was military stock. His supply source was likely a military district warehouse. Strangely, he never bought diesel or medicine himself, which made no logical sense. Unless he owned something that burned far more fuel than ordinary vehicles. Jiang Huai searched the ID Old Jiang from the northeast. 40 minutes later, he uncovered a buy listing posted 3 days prior with 0 replies, buying large quantities of diesel. Will trade military supplies. Message privately. Old Jiang was not short of diesel. What he lacked was enough fuel to operate an armored vehicle. A single armored tank burned as much fuel as 10 trucks per 100 kilometers. Old Jiang was offloading excess barrels because he only needed enough fuel for one short trip. The listing had gone up 2 days before Jiang Huai's auction announcement. Jiang Huai had tracked Old Jiang down to buy diesel, then convinced him to put an armored vehicle up for auction. Brother Yuan can fetch you an outrageous price for it. Old Jiang had agreed, yet only handed over one tank. His buy listing remained active, marked large orders prioritized. He clearly possessed more than one armored vehicle. Jiang Huai opened the private chat window. He typed a line, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, he sent just one sentence. 1,000 liters of diesel, a full batch of antibiotics, one complete water purification unit. In exchange for all heavy military equipment you hold besides the tank slated for auction. Sent at 11:47 p.m., the night before the auction. Then he moved to his third task, base renovation. 5,000 points were deducted, leaving his balance at 800. A progress bar popped up on his interface, 72-hour construction timeline, 5,000 square meters, capacity for 200 survivors. Renovation works included power supply, ventilation, water purification, living quarters, storage depots, a medical bay, command room, and mess hall. Current underground temperature, -15 degrees Celsius. Upon completion, the base would hold a steady 18 degrees above zero. More than 40 survivors packed their belongings inside the parking garage. The clatter of metal tools and constant footsteps echoed off the concrete walls. Gu Xiaoyu brushed one last hand over the medicine cabinet she had organized over 3 full days, its handwritten labels still neatly intact, then turned to leave without a backward glance. The group set off at midnight. Achi led the way at the front, Old Zhao brought up the rear, and the 40-odd survivors formed a single file line trudging through the -60-degree blizzard. Whenever someone slipped, a nearby comrade hauled them back to their feet. If a quilt blanket blew loose, the person behind would reach out to retie its fastenings. Gu Xiaoyu glanced back at the garage's exit. Let's remember where we came from, just in case we forget down the line. 3 hours later, the entire group filed safely into the civil air defense bunker. Old Zhao heaved open the blast door, and the beam of his flashlight cut all the way up to the ceiling of the 3rd underground level. She darted forward excitedly. Brother Huai, we won't have to squeeze together anymore after this. The first segment of the renovation progress bar lit up on the panel, power system installation underway. The 3D structural model updated segment by segment in real time. Jiang Huai's point balance stood at only 800. But a new private message alert pinged on his screen. Old Jiang from the northeast had replied, a single character. Deal. Jiang Huai pushed his glasses higher onto the bridge of his nose. The auction countdown ticked down to its final segment. The next day, Jiang Huai would host his first live auction watched by 2,000 users across the entire platform. He thought he held the sole armored vehicle up for bid. He had no idea the real critical trade had already closed that night. Jiang Huai jotted a line in his notebook. Step 1 completed. Old Jiang sent a follow-up message right after. Brother, how'd you figure out I had armored tanks? Jiang Huai cut straight to the point and sent a screenshot of Old Jiang's 3-day-old diesel buy listing, adding a short note beneath it. You're offloading diesel because your armored vehicles guzzle fuel. 30 barrels only suffice for a single short trip. You don't need 30 barrels of reserve fuel, you need enough to run those tanks 100 times over. The other side fell silent for a long stretch. Jiang Huai did not rush him. He switched to another window. The full platform auction countdown showed less than 14 hours remaining. Jiang Huai's announcement still pinned to the top of the public chat, with over 2,000 comments stacked beneath it. Some users posted pre-bid offers, others flooded the feed typing praise. Brother Yuan, may good fortune follow you always. He toggled back to the private chat with old Jiang. Old Jiang replied at last, "You studied psychology, huh? I've sold over a dozen batches of diesel and not a single person picked up on the fact I had more than just fuel stockpiled. You're the first." Jiang Huai, logistics manager. Occupational habit. Any supply that crosses my path, I need to trace its source. Old Jiang sent a pixelated thumbs-up emoji built into the system, then laid out his full inventory. 2 fully functional armored vehicles, tracked chassis built for snow travel. Downside is brutal fuel consumption, 300 liters burned per 100 kilometers. I've also got 1 vehicle-mounted heavy machine gun with 5,000 rounds of ammunition, 3 individual rocket launchers, and 1 crate of hand grenades. If you think this haul is too much. Jiang Huai did not wait for him to finish typing. His formal offer was already sent. 1,000 liters diesel, 1 crate amoxicillin, 1 crate cephalosporin antibiotics, 1 water purification unit processing 100 liters per hour, 20 tubes of frostbite ointment, 10 cartons of cigarettes. Total market value roughly 6,500 points, 20% higher than the black market price for the 2 tanks combined. Old Jiang's silence stretched even longer. Jiang Huai knew he was calculating how long the stockpile could sustain his own crew. 12 minutes passed. 1 single character appeared on screen. Deal. A wash of pale blue system teleport light spread across the walls of the 3rd underground level. The trade item list scrolled line by line. Old Jiang's shipment, 2 armored vehicles, heavy machine gun, 5,000 rounds ammunition, 3 rocket launchers, 1 crate grenades. Jiang Huai's shipment, diesel deducted from his petrochemical warehouse stock, antibiotics pulled from the medical bay inventory, an extra spare water purifier, cigarettes drawn from his personal reserve. When the blue glow faded, 2 gray-tracked armored vehicles sat parked on empty metal storage racks. Melting snow still clung to their treads. Ammo crates were stacked neatly beside them, and the metal grenade crate still bore the official military district sealing tape. Old Zhao came sprinting down from the 1st level. He stood staring at the tanks for 3 full seconds, then reached out to brush snow off the treads. Cold residual chill from the cross-country teleport still clung to the steel plating. Type 88 model, equipment formally issued to Jiangqing Military District. The treads were widened in a later modification for snow terrain. He traced a welded seam along the track joint with his fingertip. This weld works straight out of an ordnance factory, fish scale pattern, uniform overlapping beads with consistent spacing. Ordinary repair shops can't replicate this craftsmanship. Fewer than 3 people in all of Jiangcheng can weld to this standard. Jiang Huai committed that detail to memory. Old Zhao knew far more than just civil air defense bunkers. He could identify military-grade welding work at a glance. On the opposite side of Jiangqing, inside Zhou Huayuan's base. Zhou Huayuan stood before a full-length mirror salvaged from a frozen shopping mall, a jagged crack slicing diagonally from its top left to bottom right corner. Split in 2 by the fracture, his reflection looked taller and slimmer. He tried on 3 outfits before settling on a tailored black suit, the exclusive uniform granted to system auction holders, designed to project greater authority within the virtual auction hall. He retied his tie twice. The first attempt sat lopsided, the second pulled far too tight, bulging the veins on his neck. He had studied the angle of the virtual hall's overhead light pillars. An uneven tie would cast an asymmetrical shadow across his neck on stream. His handwritten auction speech had undergone 6 rounds of revisions. Opening line, fellow survivors, brothers and sisters all. They call me Brother Yuan. But I'd rather you simply call me Yuan. No one stands above anyone else in the apocalypse. We are all equal. He practiced the line once in front of the mirror, pausing slightly after brothers and sisters. He had noted that phrase triggered the most positive response in live chat comment sections. After his 3rd run-through of the script, he pulled up the system panel to run one final pre-auction check. His confident smile froze on his face. The top-listed sale post in the trade hall read, 1 tracked snow armored vehicle, 80% intact full working condition, heavy machine gun and full ammo included. Price tag, 4,000 points. Seller, anonymous. Note, urgent sale. For 1,000 points, 20% lower than his own planned opening bid. Over 300 comments flooded the thread within 15 minutes. Someone's undercutting Brother Yuan's auction? For 1,000? His auction starting bid's 5,000 minimum, right? Where'd this guy even get an armor tank? I've already placed a bid, 4,000 flat. Zhou Huayuan crumpled his speech script into a tight ball. He dragged the mouse to pull up the anonymous seller's profile, only to find it blank. Registration date, today. 0 prior trades, 0 buyer feedback. A single active listing only. The ID was hidden. Anonymous postings required an extra transaction fee to conceal personal identity. This rival knew the exact timing of his auction, knew his starting bid price, and deliberately posted the competing listing the night before the event. A deliberate hijack of his auction. He slammed the crumpled script down on the desk, knocking over a ceramic water mug that soaked the edges of his notes. Pull every record, track down every user who's ever listed military supplies on this platform. Investigate every last one. Brother Yuan, what about tomorrow's auction? Jiang Huai twisted to face the mirror. His split reflection showed one half wearing a calm smile, the other rigid and furious. Proceed as scheduled. Back in the Civil Air Defense bunker, Jiang Huai finalized his anonymous listing. For 1,000 points, hidden user ID, 50 extra points paid for full anonymity fees. Gu Xiaoyu walked over to his station. Will he figure out it's you behind this? He'll know someone's sabotaging his event. He'll never know exactly who. An unseen rival preys on his paranoia far worse than a known enemy. And you can sleep soundly through all this? Perfectly well. As she turned to leave, Jiang Huai called after her, tell everyone to turn in early tonight. Tomorrow, we watch the show unfold. Jiang Huai sat alone in the command room as the auction countdown ticked past midnight. Total online platform users hit 2,481, nearly double the usual concurrent traffic. Every single user waited eagerly for the live auction the next morning. Only Jiang Huai read a new private message just sent by old Zhang. Brother, the shipment arrived safe. Don't place any bids on the tankies auctioning tomorrow. I welded its treads myself, shoddy work. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses and typed a short reply, noted. Thanks for the heads up. He closed the system panel. The blast doors deep within the bunker were sealed tight. The blizzard still howled outside, while the frigid 15-degree underground bunker slowly transformed into a warm 18-degree safe haven segment by segment. The renovation progress bar filled its third marker. Dawn drew near. 10 minutes before the auction launch, concurrent platform users broke 3,000. The system's virtual auction hall opened, a circular domed chamber with golden ceiling lighting, 300 glowing pillar seats arranged in a ring. White light pillars marked regular bidders, blue for VIPs, and a single gold pillar centered directly beneath the dome reserved exclusively for the auction host. Zhou Huayuan stood inside the gold pillar, immaculately fitted in his black suit, hair perfectly gelled and combed neat, an entire week's family food rations in point value traded for that single can of hair gel. Today survival took a back seat. He intended to build his personal brand above all else. Live chat scrolling non-stop starting at 8:50 p.m. Brother Yuan's incredible. The apocalypse's finest auctioneer. Where'd you get such a formal suit anyway? Zhou Huayuan adjusted his virtual tie and cleared his throat. 3,000 pairs of virtual eyes locked solely on him. In the command room, Jiang Huai opened the auction spectator mode. He could not place bids or send comments, and no glowing pillar marked his presence within the hall, exactly how he preferred it. He pulled out his notebook and drew 3 vertical columns. Auction bid progress, Zhou Huayuan's hosting tactics, live chat sentiment shifts. The auction officially began. Fellow survivors, brothers and sisters all. Zhou Huayuan's voice boomed across the virtual hall through amplified audio, echoing around the golden dome. He had practiced the timing meticulously, a 2-second pause after the opening line to let the reverberation fade completely, leaving total silence across the virtual crowd the instant the echo died away. They call me Brother Yuan. But I'd rather you simply call me Yuan. No one stands above anyone else in the apocalypse. Every single one of us struggles just to stay alive through minus 60-degree blizzards. Live chat flooded with supportive messages. Brother Yuan speaks the truth, truly broad-minded, #positive vibes, #. Many of you have asked why I host an auction at a time like this. His tone dipped half an octave before rising again. Stockpiling supplies alone cannot sustain survival in the apocalypse. Circulation is what keeps us going. One man hoarding barrels of diesel only keeps one person alive. But trading that diesel for antibiotics saves a doctor, and that single physician can treat 100 desperate survivors. Chat replies, Apocalypse Economics Lesson, Brother Yuan's vision is unmatched. That is the core reason I launched this mutual aid initiative. I seek no personal gain in points from this auction. I want every survivor to witness one truth. Trade in the end times need not rely on deception, so long as you place trust in the person you strike a deal with. A wall of identical messages filled the chat feed. We trust Brother Yuan. Jiang Huai scribbled a note in his notebook. He weaves a mutual aid program, auction events, and personal brand identity into a cohesive narrative. His operational skill is twice as formidable as it was in his past life's timeline. He is no lightweight fool. A full 3D render of the armored vehicle descended from the domed ceiling, the system rendering every minute detail. Treads, armor plating, machine gun mount. Starting bid set at 5,000 points, minimum bid increment 200 points each round. The second bidding opened. A chat message popped up instantly. Wait a second, someone listed an identical tank outside the auction hall for only 4,000. 30 seconds later a second comment. I checked the listing, anonymous seller, for 1,000 points available for immediate trade right now. A third, fourth, fifth message followed in quick succession, chat volume tripling overnight. A full 1,000-point price gap? The external listings note says real photo evidence attached. Bidding inside the virtual hall climbed all the way to 7,800 points, yet the chat audience ignored the auction bids entirely, fixated on the 4,000-point tank posted outside. Old Wang from Nanshan Camp placed the final winning bid, and the hammer fell at 8,000 points total. Zhou Huayuan's internal target valuation had been 12,000 points. The anonymous competing listing erased 4,000 points of anticipated profit margin. 3 minutes after the hammer dropped, Old Wang posted a buyer review in the trade feedback section. Armored vehicle received, but its treads have been welded for repairs, crude hand seam work, not factory original. Brother Yuan, your listing clearly stated fully intact. Does a welded tank count as undamaged stock? The live chat feed froze for a heartbeat, then erupted into chaos. It's been welded over? You failed to disclose critical damage in the auction listing. Isn't this fraud? Hashtag explain yourself, Brother Yuan. Hashtag. The chat feed shifted overnight from praise of his excellence to accusations of shoddy merchandise, with fewer than 40 lines separating the two extremes of public opinion. Old Wang attached 2 supporting photos. The first showed the jagged, uneven weld along the tread joint, twisted like a centipede's legs. The second captured a 2mm wide crack already spreading along the welded seam. Jiang Huai zoomed in on the photos. Old Zhang's welding skill was undeniably amateur, a stark contrast to the uniform fish-scale military factory welds Old Zhao had described the previous day. No wonder Old Zhang had admitted, I welded the treads myself. It was not humble honesty, but guilty apprehension. Zhou Huayuan loosened his tie, the glowing edge of his virtual light pillar trembling faintly. Old Zhang, I can explain this to everyone. But he possessed no evidence to defend himself. He had never inspected the treads. Old Zhang had merely claimed the tank was fully intact, and he had taken the seller's word at face value without verification. His prior career as a real estate agent had trained him only to exaggerate the merits of goods, not inspect hidden flaws. The live chat began a mass exodus of critical comments, the flood impossible to stem once it gained momentum. Hashtag full refund, hashtag auctioneer owning up to scam, hashtag hilarious. This grand apocalypse auction's spectacular failure. Everyone go check the 4,000-point tank listed outside. Zhou Huayuan cut the live broadcast abruptly. The golden virtual dome vanished, all 300 bitter pillars fading gray simultaneously. The final chat message read, events over LMO. Late that night, Zhou Huayuan spent an hour combing through data, the anonymous listings timestamp, trade hall log records, recent trading partners. Every trace was sealed behind full anonymity protection. The system's anonymity rule was ironclad, pay the service fee, and your IP address and full transaction history remain fully concealed. An invisible wall blocked every lead he tried to follow. He slammed his fist hard against the desk, sending the enamel water mug tumbling and spilling liquid everywhere. He opened the public global broadcast channel, discarding his polished speech script entirely to post only 3 blunt lines. Whoever you are hiding behind this anonymous ID, you ruined my auction today. You will live to regret this choice. The chat reply feed filled with a uniform stream of single-word replies. Understood. Back in the command room. After reading the public broadcast message, Jiang Huai toggled back to his private chat with Old Zhang. A new message from Old Zhang waited on screen, sent the second Old Wang posted his photo evidence. Thank you so much. I'm so relieved I didn't go through his auction platform. I welded that tank's treads myself, my craftsmanship's terrible. Brother Yuan listed it as fully intact, and I assumed he'd inspect it thoroughly before auctioning. I never would have handed it over if he disclosed the weld work up front. A short pause, then another line. Brother, the tank you listed for sale is also mine. Did you check its tread welds? Jiang Huai replied, I inspected it thoroughly. You welded that one as well, double layer seam, rough outer bead, straight internal fusion. It won't split under travel conditions. Old Zhang, how could you tell just from photos? Jiang Huai, I zoomed in to analyze the texture of the welded seams. Old Zhang, did you serve in the military before? Jiang Huai, logistics manager by trade. Trained to analyze equipment maintenance records and structural repair marks. A pop-up intelligence module alert appeared in the corner of his system panel. Over the past 24 hours, Brother Yuan's general store initiated 27 separate bulk procurement orders for construction materials, cement, steel rebar, thermal insulation panels. Total spending exceeded 8,000 points, more revenue than the failed auction had projected to earn. 27 separate construction orders. Expansion? Accelerated base expansion plans. Jiang Huai took a screenshot and filed it in Zhou Huayuan's intelligence dossier, drawing a large question mark beside the 27 transaction tally. The auction had lost him massive profit margin. Where was he sourcing 8,000 extra points to fund large-scale construction materials? 1 hour remained on the base renovation countdown timer. Jiang Huai stood at the edge of the first underground levels platform, watching the 5,000 square meter bunker remodel layer by layer via the system's automated reconstruction process. The 3D structural model on his panel showed 97% of the underground space shaded green as completed. Cross-sections of ventilation ducts rotated automatically, percentage progress markers tracking de-icing work on every pipe joint. Gu Xiaoyu walked over empty-handed, no water mug in tow. She stood half a step beside him, watching the progress bar fill together in silence. 98%. 99%. Countdown ticked down. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The entire bunker shuddered as renovation finalized. Rows of emergency cool white panel lights flickered on across the first level's ceiling, soft, neutral illumination a world apart from the dim yellow tungsten bulbs of the original abandoned bunker. The lights spread downward level by level. On the second-floor storage zone, heavy-duty metal racking slid into precise alignment along motorized tracks, surface rust vanishing completely, every shelf coated with anti-freeze protective film. Down on the third-level water purification workshop, water pumps hummed to life, drawing groundwater through 3 sequential filter stages. Old Zhao squatted beside a pipe spout and cupped a handful to taste. It's warm, lukewarm even. His voice carried a faint rough hoarseness. This groundwater used to freeze solid mid-pipe, biting cold enough to hurt your teeth to drink. Not anymore. Ah Chi came sprinting out of the mess hall, the largest communal space Jiang Huai had allocated during planning. Living quarters could be cramped to make do, but all survivors needed a shared gathering space. He ran a hand across the stainless steel countertop, built-in insulated food warmers, and a full row of hanging storage hooks lining the wall. Brother Huai, how many people can this feed at once? Seating for 40 diners simultaneously. Old Zhao paced a full circuit around the first underground level. This bunker had been his solitary watch post for over 2 years. Once, behind the blast doors lay endless shadowed corners, every concrete wall, ventilation pipe, and rusted water valve illuminated only by the thin beam of his handheld flashlight. Now bright lights revealed every hidden nook, open for everyone to inhabit. He paused beside the new living quarters partition cubicles, fitted with 4 bunk beds per compartment and fabric privacy curtains strung between bunks. He brushed a palm across the thick curtain fabric. This exact spot used to hold gas mask storage lockers. We replaced the stock once during the SARS outbreak, another batch for earthquake disaster drills. None of them were ever needed. He paused a beat. Now it's a place for people to sleep through the cold nights. Jiang Huai stood at the entrance of the command room. The room sat closest to the blast-proof door. Everyone entering or leaving the base had to pass right by him. He'd rearranged the layout himself. The system's default placement was deep on the 3rd floor, but Jiang Huai had manually dragged the command room to the ground floor entryway. Safety aside, he needed to lay eyes on every person who came and went. A system pop-up notification flashed on his panel. Jiangcheng base renovation complete. Total area, 5,000 square m. Maximum capacity, 200 residents. Current internal temperature, 18 degrees Celsius. System level, LV.2. New unlocked features, trade intelligence monitoring, counterparty profiling, expanded material database. It had hit level 2. The counterparty profiling function would come in handy for his next deep dive into Zhou Huayuan's operations. No rush for now. He folded away the system panel and turned to face the crowd gradually gathering on the open platform. Old Zhao stepped forward first. A Chi came sprinting over. Gu Xiaoyu stood in the doorway of the medical bay. 3 hospital beds lined the space, the screen of a basic diagnostic monitor glowing pale blue. She tapped the screen to power it down and walked out. The medical students poked their heads out from the side rooms, auto repair mechanics still clutching their wrenches, followed by more survivors. Some wrapped themselves in tattered blankets, others brushed dust off their palms after hauling the last crates of supplies into storage. Mess hall. 15 minutes. 2 rows of enamel bowls lined the stainless steel long tables. Gu Xiaoyu had dug them out of cardboard boxes in an abandoned warehouse and scrubbed each one clean. Each bowl held steaming broth brewed from dehydrated vegetables mixed with shredded canned meat. A plate of baked compressed biscuits sat at the center. A Chi had broken them into pieces and toasted them in the thermal cabinet until they formed crisp caramelized crusts. Jiang Huai stood at the front of the room. He did not climb onto a stool, slam a table, or shout for silence. He simply held his enamel mug and waited for the crowd to quiet on their own. Roughly 5 or 6 seconds passed before the chatter died down. Welcome to Jiangcheng Base. His voice was soft, yet it carried clearly beneath the concrete domed ceiling. There is no leader here. No arbitrary rules. No mandatory obedience, only 4 simple principles. Everyone tends to their own work, and no one owes anyone anything. He paused and pushed his glasses higher up the bridge of his nose. Those who tally accounts oversee all incoming and outgoing supplies, that's my role. Those who tend to the sick ensure every person survives, that's Xiaoyu. Gu Xiaoyu nodded in acknowledgement. Those who repair infrastructure maintain every pipe and wire running through the base, that's Old Zhao. Old Zhao hung his head, his Adam's apple bobbing once before he nodded. Those who run reconnaissance scouting missions, haul cargo, and scavenge for materials outside, that's Chi. Chi stood up from the corner, half-a-baked biscuit still pinched between his fingers, clearly unaware he'd been assigned an official role. He stared blankly for a second, then stuffed the biscuit into his mouth. So I'm just the errand boy, right? A quiet laugh rippled through the group. What about you? Chi mumbled around a mouthful of biscuit. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses, the cold overhead ceiling lights reflecting off the lenses. I'm in charge of making trades and sourcing supplies. Laughter erupted, the first genuine burst since the extreme cold descended. No one had told a joke, yet more than 40 people who hadn't smiled in weeks had finally found a reason to laugh. The sound bounced off the concrete walls before fading into the bowls of hot soup. Gu Xiaoyu watched Jiang Huai. It had only been a little over 10 days since he'd appeared at the parking lot amid the blizzard. 40 people who'd once huddled alone, shivering through 60 below zero nights, now circled a pot of warm broth and laughed together. She held the edge of her bowl up to hide her face. The soup was scaldingly hot. Chi trotted over, scooping chunks of canned meat onto old Zhao's plate, then Jiang Huai's. Brother Huai, eat more, you've lost weight. Old Zhao rarely spoke, but one diner called out to him mid-meal, Master Zhao, a water pipe's clogged. Could you take a look tomorrow? Old Zhao stood at once. Which pipe? Show me now. The mess hall slowly emptied. Some survivors headed to set up their sleeping mats, others went to organize the supply warehouse. Gu Xiaoyu handed a vitamin C tablet to a medical student who'd just recovered from a fever in the medical bay. His temperature had broken completely. Jiang Huai paused briefly outside the command room and pulled up his system panel. Without noticing when it had shifted, his point balance had climbed from 800 post-renovation to 6,200. Over the 3 days spent renovating the base, he'd never paused his short-cycle trades, reselling scrap steel leftover from dismantling parking lot vehicles, bulk listing scavenging intelligence maps newly scouted by Chi, liquidating spare equipment parts old Zhao had unearthed from civil air defense shelters. Each transaction was modest, ranging from dozens to a few hundred points, adding up to a total gain of 5,400 points over 72 hours. Combined with the advance payment recouped from old Zhang's diesel shipment, his balance hit exactly 6,200. With this 6,200-point buffer, he now had room to maneuver for the upcoming diesel resource war. Jiang Huai wrapped his knuckles twice against the doorframe and stepped into the command room, pulling up his Phase 2 task checklist. Expand base population to 100 residents. Upgrade system to LV.3. Complete combat refitting of armored vehicles. Establish full Jiangqing intelligence network. Cut off Zhou Huayuan's construction material supply chain. Trace Zhou Huayuan's hidden point revenue source. He took an 8,000-point loss at the auction, so where did the fresh capital come from? Infiltrate his mutual aid program. Establish contact with military factions along the permanent snow line. Secure a secondary diesel reserve from the petrochemical warehouse. Maintain continuous surveillance of Zhou Huayuan. His gaze locked onto the 10th line of the list. A pop-up from the intelligence module appeared. Monitored keyword. Brother Yuan's general goods. Construction material acquisition orders are accelerating. 11 new listings posted in the past 12 hours. Total value approaching 10,000 points. Jiang Huai tapped 3 slow knuckles against the tabletop. 10,000 points, less than a day after his auction bid fell through. Zhou Huayuan must possess a hidden stream of point income. He'd combed through all public trade logs. The mutual aid program's revenue volume was far too small to cover this gap, and self-trading between alternate accounts generated no net point inflow. All 3 obvious leads led nowhere. What was his secret revenue stream? He scribbled a single word beside the 10th line. Investigate. He closed the panel. The heating pipes hummed softly. Inside the base it was 18 degrees Celsius, while outside the temperature plummeted to minus 60 degrees, a gap of 88 degrees separated by a single blast-proof door. The door remained shut tight, and the survivors inside had settled down to sleep. Day 2 after base completion, 6 a.m. Jiang Huai laid a full set of gear out before Chi. Polar combat suit, resized via system modification, shoulders and sleeve lengths custom tailored. Portable diesel heater, latest model, 12-hour runtime on a single fuel fill. Walkie-talkie, 3-kilometer signal range, capable of penetrating 2 concrete walls. Dagger, cold steel blade purchased from the system mall, fully sharpened, anti-slip textured grip. Chi picked up the dagger, flipped it over in his palm, and set it back down. Brother Huai, this knife. For self-defense only. Not to attack anyone unprovoked. What if I can't fight them off? Then run. If blizzards can't catch you, a handful of stray survivors won't stand a chance. Chi slid the dagger into his side pocket and zipped the compartment closed. He unzipped it again to test the grip's fit, then resealed it. He tapped the walkie-talkie twice, Pressing its round plastic button emitted a crisp click, and the echo of the command room crackled across the communication channel. He clipped the radio to his waist belt and grinned. Brother Huai, this feels like the level 3 backpack I used in that chicken dinner shooting game back in the day. This is not a game. A cheese smile faded for a split second before returning. Real gear's way better than game props. Jiang Huai unrolled a hand-drawn map of Jiangqing drafted by old Zhao, every street name across the city's 5 districts handwritten in ink. 3 color codes marked the territory: blue for scavenging sites, red for danger zones, green for safe travel routes. Only 5 blue markers existed so far, plotted from old Zhao's memory. The red and green sections remained blank. 3 days. Traverse all 5 districts of Jiangcheng. Map every scavenging location, survivor settlement, and threat zone. No matter if others have scouted before us, we'll be the first to build a complete, full picture of the whole city. What about Brother Yuan's operations? Prioritize the southern district. Record the scale of his activity, how frequently his people patrol, and the full range of territory they cover. A chief folded the map down to palm size and tucked it into his inner jacket pocket. He headed for the doorway. This time he didn't sneak any canned food on his way out. Brother Huai, I'll be back in 3 days. Stay safe. Day 1. A transmission crackled over the walkie-talkie every hour, each message a concise log, location, timestamp, brief notes, jotted down by Jiang Huai with a single swipe of his pen. Achi spent the night in the control room of an abandoned bus depot. The windows were shattered, but the roof remained intact, and he cranked the diesel heater down to its lowest setting to sustain warmth until dawn. East City Textile Mill. Half the roof collapsed. Underground warehouse holds a stock of industrial thermal insulation cotton, enough to line 20 bedding sets. Marked on the map. East City Gas Station. Fuel tanks already drained, but at least 5 liters of residual gasoline left at the pump nozzles. An elderly man guards the site. He said he'd consider relocating to our base. He's still weighing his options for now. South City Hongyun Department Store. Main entrance frozen solid, but the second floor window can be pried open. Massive stock of winter coats, down jackets, and gloves untouched, hidden deep in storage vaults. High priority target. Jiang Huai marked each new blue dot on the map as the reports came through. By nightfall, 9 scavenging sites were logged. Day 2. Achi's radio updates shifted from simple location reports to analytical assessments. North City Old Residential Quarter. Small survivor settlement of 12 people. Their leader's a former police officer. They heat their stairwell with rusted metal barrel stoves, no electricity. Orderly group. They're open to trades, 2 cartons of cigarettes in exchange for fever-reducing medicine. What do you think, Brother Huai? Jiang Huai replied, accept the trade. List the fever medicine on the radio channel. They can connect directly to complete the exchange. Wait, you can post trade listings through the walkie-talkie? The system doesn't restrict transaction terminals to just the main panel. Earlier you told me only the panel worked for trades. I didn't want you messing around with untested functions and triggering errors. Achi laughed over the radio. His signal lingered longest over the southern district that night. I crossed paths with Brother Yuan's men twice today. First encounter outside the old Southern Cinema, 3 guys driving that steel-plated welded pickup truck. They push the mutual aid program on everyone they see. Their pitch has changed this time. Anyone who signs up gets a military-issue overcoat on the spot. That old man who yelled at them to leave last week accepted the coat today. Jiang Huai set his pen down. Zhou Huayuan was raising his incentives. He'd shifted from empty verbal recruitment to bribing new recruits with tangible supplies. A military overcoat traded for roughly 5 points on the market, and each new member registration also valued at 5 points. He was burning capital, operating at 0 or even negative profit just to secure more people. Jiang Huai circled the words, military overcoat, in his notebook. The strategy made no financial sense. Throwing supplies at new recruits generated no net point profit, meaning Zhou Huayuan's goal was not to collect membership fees. Second run-in at the cinema. Brother Yuan's crew set up a makeshift shelter with diesel heaters, calling it a mutual aid program reception station. They serve free hot soup daily on one condition: you must register a full inventory of all your personal supplies. They say it's for a shared resource archive. Anyone who refuses to hand over their list only gets soup, no membership access. Did anyone register their supplies? A line formed outside the tent. I watched for 20 minutes. 6 people submitted their inventories. The soup's genuine, with chunks of meat in it. Shared resource archive, nothing more than a pretext for intelligence gathering. The registration form was just a cover. With a single soup station serving hot meals, Zhou Huayuan bought detailed records of every survivor's remaining stockpile across Jiangcheng. The information he gained was worth 10,000 times more than a pot of broth. Day 3. Achi switched to a formal debrief tone over the radio. Brother Huai, I've finished scouting all 5 districts. I'll head back in roughly 2.5 hours. One more thing. He panted heavily through the transmission. Abandoned West City Middle School. A radio enthusiast intercepted an anonymous message posted on the public platform. Jiang Huai had already seen the pop-up alert from the intelligence module, a private anonymous message posted to the new server Y-channel Jiangcheng Survivor Mutual Aid. I'm withdrawing from the mutual aid program. Last week I turned over 40 gene of compressed biscuits plus a carton of cigarettes, promised weekly distributions in return. 4 days ago they delivered on schedule, throwing in 2 extra energy bars as a special care bonus. This week 41 participants handed over supplies, yet each only received 1/3 of last week's rations. No discount applied to point payouts. The total resource pool never increased despite more members joining. Something's off. A warning to anyone still inside the program. Posting anonymously. Jiang Huai took a screenshot and filed it into his dedicated Zhou Huayuan intelligence archive. A Chi's voice crackled through the radio again. Brother Huai, you saw that message? What's our move? Hold off. Wait for the defectors to come to us. Who? The people who quit the mutual aid program. Night of day 3. A Chi returned to the base. A thick crust of ice encased his polar combat suit, his eyebrows and eyelashes frosted pure white, as if he'd crawled straight out of the blizzard. Gu Xiaoyu pressed a steaming hot towel to his face and he yelped, scurrying over to huddle beside the diesel heater and refusing to move. Yet the hand-drawn map tucked inside his jacket remained intact. Jiang Huai unrolled it. Over 3 days of traversal, 21 scavenging sites, 4 small survivor settlements, and 3 red-marked raider zones, all clustered around the train station, were plotted. Every location bore handwritten annotations from a Chi, an X marked emptied stockpiles, a circle meant usable supplies remained, overlapping X and circle symbols indicated supplies guarded by survivors. Raider zones were marked with triangles, impassable. Lookouts posted, minimum 2 rifles on patrol. Jiang Huai uploaded all the data into the system. Combined with the 5 sites Old Zhao had mapped earlier, the blank canvas of Jiangcheng's map was now dotted with 26 location markers. He circled Zhou Huayuan's core sphere of activity, the southern triangular district encompassing the cinema, old residential quarter, and abandoned department store, where his reception station sat centered within the zone. His strategy has shifted. He summoned the 4 core team members to the command room. A Chi still had a damp towel draped over his head. The map was spread wide across the table. Jiang Huai circled 3 key regions, the southern district controlled by Zhou Huayuan, the train station raider territory, and the northern official government shelter. Our original strategy was purely self-preservation, stockpile supplies, and fortify the base. Our new objective is to seize control of Jiangcheng's entire supply flow. Monopolize market pricing power, so every resource traded in the city must reference our price benchmarks. Old Zhao frowned. How can we accomplish that? Intelligence. We hold a full map of every stockpile location, knowing exactly what goods each site holds. Instead of hoarding massive stockpiles ourselves, we'll dominate circulation. Train all platform traders to default to our channel for all Jiangcheng-based resources. After the meeting, Gu Xiaoyu lingered behind. She slid a twice-folded slip of paper across the table. When Jiang Huai unfolded it, a horizontal line separated the 2 phrases supply flow control and Zhou Huayuan, with a single word scrawled in the middle, different. Your eyes lit up when you talked about controlling supply chains, but they went dark when you mentioned Zhou Huayuan. What did he do to you in the past? Jiang Huai fell silent for a long stretch. The water in his enamel mug had gone cold, and the low hum of heating pipes filled the quiet room. Something that happened in my previous life. Gu Xiaoyu did not press for further details. She flipped the slip of paper over, wrote the word understood on the reverse side, and pushed it back beside his elbow before turning to return to the medical bay. Jiang Huai tucked the slip into his notebook, flipped to a blank new page, and wrote 4 large characters at the top. Phase 2. Intercept his supply lines. The next line read, Zhou Huayuan's construction material supply chain, target 10,000 points, source unknown. Launch investigation. Through the command room window, the blizzard shrouded the distant city in dark silhouettes. But 26 markers had been hammered into the map, each acting as a watchful eye. The 26th marker was that anonymous withdrawal message, the first crack in Zhou Huayuan's pyramid scheme. It was only one tiny fracture, but one crack was all he needed. Jiang Huai flipped to a fresh blank page in his notebook and penned 4 prominent words at the header. The Diesel War. At 3 o'clock in the early morning, a pop-up alert from the intelligence module lit up the screen. Monitored keyword, Brother Yuan's General Goods. Zhou Huayuan posted a reward listing on the trade platform. Wanted, coordinates of Jiangcheng Petrochemical Warehouse. Reward, 500 points. Anyone with accurate intel, message me privately. Jiang Huai set his pen down. He remembered the warehouse from his past life. Raiders discovered it in the 2nd month of the apocalypse. Its diesel reserves enough to sustain every survivor in the city through an entire winter. The raiders only hauled away 1/3 of the fuel, then set the rest ablaze. Their reasoning: if we can't carry it all, no one else gets to use it. In this timeline, Jiang Huai knew its exact location, at the far end of West City Industrial Road, behind a row of gray factory buildings along the riverbank. He'd passed the site while the fire still raged in his past life. He summoned a Qi and old Zhao to the command room. Armored vehicle prep. We depart in 30 minutes. A Qi had been munching baked crusty biscuits in the mess hall, the batch Gu Xiaoyu had made, and stuffed the rest into his mouth before rushing out. Old Zhao adjusted his glasses. Where are we headed? To move supplies. The armored vehicle carved a path through the raging blizzard. Its Type 88 tracks crunched smoothly over frozen ice, the chassis riding as steady as if traveling on clear pavement. A Qi huddled in the cargo hold clutching a portable heater, while old Zhao pored over the hand-drawn map beside him. Outside the windows, Jiangqing lay frozen solid. Shattered glass storefronts lined commercial streets, wind-torn signage hung in frigid icicle ribbons. A survivor wrapped in a down duvet rummaged through a trash bin. He lifted his head and locked eyes with Jiang Huai for a split second before ducking back to his scavenging. Brother Huai. A Qi stared as the distant figure shrank into the snow. Did he just see our truck? He saw the armored vehicle. He'll remember it, and word will spread. Let everyone know an armed, organized group operates in this city. They'll think twice before launching random raids. The armored rig rolled over a packed snowdrift, jolting the cabin. Old Zhao's map slid off his knees. He retrieved it and tapped the label for Industrial Road with his finger. Shaojian, there's an abandoned auto repair shop up ahead on this road. Back when I worked civil air defense, I inspected the underground civil shelter here. There's a small storage cellar underneath, likely still holding spare parts. What kind of parts? Oil pumps, for fuel extraction, industrial grade. If the warehouse's storage tanks have electric pumps, we'll be set. If not, manual industrial hand pumps can draw 2 tons of diesel per hour with one operator. Jiang Huai jotted 4 words into his notebook: oil pumps, auto repair shop. Sitting in the passenger seat, Jiang Huai kept 4 tabs open on his system panel. In the trade hall channel, 3 replies had already appeared beneath Zhou Huayuan's reward post. There's a PetroChina oil depot in the western suburbs, not sure if any fuel remains. Underground fuel tank at the East City gas station. I'll send coordinates via private message. A follow-up from Zhou Huayuan himself. Fellow survivors, any accurate coordinates will earn a hefty bonus. Please reach out. None of the comments mentioned the gray petrochemical warehouse at the end of Industrial Road. Jiang Huai switched back to the main trade hall and posted a buy listing of his own. Wanted, 50 sets of anti-slip tire chains, top price offered. Send coordinates via private message. He deliberately set the bid price artificially high. Less than 10 minutes later, a trader accepted the order. Comment threads sprouted below the listing. Why is this guy buying tire chains? Driving vehicles through snow, obviously. Who's still driving around in this blizzard? Isn't it freezing to death out there? Jiang Huai ignored every comment. This was exactly the distraction he needed. Anyone monitoring his ID Jiang would assume he was focused on automotive accessories. A Qi leaned forward from the back seat. Brother Huai, when did we need tire chains? We don't need them. Then why buy them? To make other people think we need them. A Qi stared blankly for 2 full seconds. Old Zhao caught on first, cracking a rare smile that pulled at the frostbite scabs on the corner of his mouth. Xiaojiang, I've used this diversion tactic back when I managed civil air defense projects. When inspectors came to audit our facilities, I'd guide them straight to check the fire hydrants and ignore the critical hidden storage vaults. The armored vehicle turned onto Industrial Road. Factory buildings loomed dark on both sides, all windows shattered, metal sign frames the only remnants of wind-torn storefront signage. At the road's far end stood the row of gray petrochemical factories. Peeling paint flaked off the exterior walls, yet the main structural frame remained intact. Behind the buildings rose 6 cylindrical fuel storage tanks, half buried beneath thick drifts of snow. Jiang Huai pushed open the vehicle door. Wind at -60 degrees cut into his face like shards of blade. He walked over to the pump house beside the oil storage tanks. The door was locked, a padlock frozen solid into a lump of ice. Old Zhao pulled a crowbar out of his toolbox. No rush. Jiang Huai glanced at his system panel. Zhou Huayuan's new bounty had just refreshed. Wanted, coordinates of petrochemical warehouse. Reward raised to 1,000 points. Urgent. 3 new comments sat beneath the post. Why is Brother Yuan hunting for a warehouse? Stockpiling fuel. He's handing out space heater subsidies through the mutual aid program. Brother Yuan's a good man. I'll turn over coordinates the second I find any. Jiang Huai typed a line on the panel and sent it to Zhou Huayuan via a throwaway alt account. Abandoned oil depot in the eastern suburbs. 6 storage tanks. Entrance behind the pump house. After sending it, he stared at the screen for roughly 3 minutes. Zhou Huayuan replied instantly. Many thanks, brother. Points will be transferred the moment I verify the coordinates. Then Jiang Huai saw exactly what he'd been waiting for. Zhou Huaiyuan updated the bounty status on the public feed to resolved. He'd swallowed the lie. The coordinates were fake. That eastern suburbs depot had been completely looted in the first week of the apocalypse. Nothing remained there but empty metal husks. But by the time Zhou Huaiyuan dispatched men to investigate, discover the place was barren, and circle back to resume searching, a full day would slip away. One day was enough time to empty half a warehouse's reserves. Jiang Huai deleted the temporary alt account. He stood and brushed rust flakes off his palms. Old Zhao, did you locate the oil pumps? Basement of the auto repair shop. 2 manual industrial pumps, 1 electric model, the motor's frozen solid, but the pump assembly is intact. Hauled them all back. Old Zhao pulled the pumps out of his backpack. He'd carried both by himself, his entire back dusted with snow. Old Zhao had already pried the frozen padlock loose with the crowbar. The pump house's iron gate creaked stiffly as they pushed it open, revealing an electrical switch room inside. The circuit breakers had long tripped, yet the valves on the fuel pipelines remained undamaged. Jiang Huai twisted one valve, no resistance at all. The pipelines hadn't frozen through. A Qi stands sentry outside. Old Zhao, come down with me. The inspection hatches for the oil storage tanks were underground. Jiang Huai gripped his flashlight and descended more than a dozen iron rungs. The beam swept across a domed circular chamber lined with concrete, pipelines snaking down from the ceiling to connect with the valves, which were dusted with a thin layer of frost. Jiang Huai reached out and twisted one stem. It turned freely. He opened the sampling valve on the first tank. Thick liquid oozed from the spout. Diesel. The extreme cold had thickened it slightly, but it hadn't congealed entirely. -60 degrees sat right at the cloud point threshold for this grade, pumpable, combustible, fully usable. Old Zhao knelt beside the valve and caught a palmful of the fuel, bringing it up to his nose to inhale the fumes. 35 diesel, military grade. There are heating coils laid along the tank bottoms. This facility definitely supplied military installations back in the day. Jiang Huai stood, sweeping the flashlight beam in a circle across the ceiling. 6 storage tanks, each holding roughly 50 tons. 300 tons of diesel total. In this end times, 300 tons of fuel could sustain a small city through an entire brutal winter. In his past life, those marauders had burned 200 tons of it to ashes. The night Jiang Huai froze to death in an ice crevice, survivors huddled in unheated basements across Jiangcheng at -70 degrees, their frozen corpses stacked into snowdrifts by morning. None of them had known 300 tons of usable diesel waited untouched at the far end of West City Industrial Road. Now those 300 tons belonged to him. Start moving it out. Jiang Huai tucked the flashlight back into his combat uniform pocket. 3 days. Not a single drop left behind. Old Zhao, work out a pumping allocation schedule. A Qi, keep watch outside, leave your walkie-talkie on, radio me the second you spot anyone. Old Zhao had already sketched numbers for the 6 tanks and matching pump assignments on the switch room wall, wedging the flashlight between his shoulder and ear to free his hands as pencil carved 6 horizontal lines into the concrete. A Qi clipped the walkie-talkie to his uniform collar, slid his dagger into his side holster, tapped the hilt to confirm it sat comfortably, then vanished into the blizzard. The armored vehicle's engine rumbled low outside the warehouse. As the first load of diesel barrels was secured aboard, a Qi's hushed voice crackled over the walkie-talkie. Brother Huai. Brother Yuan's men. They're canvassing every building in the Eastern District asking about oil depots. I checked my informants. They've been searching for 3 hours, heading entirely the wrong direction. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. The gray silhouettes of the storage tanks and a faint smudge of daylight through the distant snowstorm reflected across the lenses. Let them keep searching. Night 1. The armored truck made 6 round trips through the blizzard. Down on the 3rd level of the Civil Air Defense Shelter, Old Zhao directed workers haul barrel after barrel into the underground fuel depot he'd mapped out. The depot occupied the deepest section of Level 3, a disused fire cistern he'd repurposed. Old Zhao had cleared out the cistern floor, laid 2 layers of thermal insulation cotton, and spaced thermometers every 5 meters along the walls. When Jiang Huai descended to check progress, Old Zhao was squatting beside the cistern edge drafting a barrel stacking diagram, 5 barrels wide, 3 deep, 12 per layer, each tier separated by angle steel support frames after 3 stacked layers. This cistern used to hold fire suppression water, 200 tons capacity, Old Zhao said without looking up from his drawing. Now we're storing diesel, 300 tons exceeds its original load limit. I need to recalculate the floor bearing capacity. Jiang Huai studied the hand-drawn layout for a full minute. Every line was neat and precise, with extraction order and directional markers labeled on each tier. Keep a copy of this blueprint. Other bases will need reference plans later. Old Zhao's pencil paused mid-stroke at the mention of other bases. He adjusted his glasses and resumed drawing without comment. Back at the petrochemical warehouse, Achi radioed 6 routine safety updates. His final transmission carried a faint note of satisfaction. Brother Huai, I circled the entire warehouse perimeter, no living souls within 2 kilometers. The blizzard's too severe for anyone to venture out. He paused briefly. I heard Brother Yuan's cruise vehicle engines over in the eastern district. Their exhaust sounds like clanging tin cans. His beat-up pickup is overdue for major repairs. Old Zhao set up a small portable heater in the depot corner, holding his hands out to soak up the warmth. The purplish scabs of his frostbite reddened as the heat hit them. Jiang Huai noticed Old Zhao's thumbs trembling faintly, not from cold. The 48-year-old had hauled 40 barrels of diesel single-handedly through the night. Night 2. Over 40% of the warehouse's diesel reserves still remained. Jiang Huai sat inside the pump house switch room, for windows open side by side on his system panel, trade hall, point balance ledger, Zhou Huayuan surveillance feed, anonymous cell order portal. He listed the first batch of fuel transported back to the base anonymously on the platform, 20 barrels priced at 150 points apiece. Zhou Huayuan's official buying rate sat at 165 points per barrel, 10% higher than Jiang Huai's listing price. Less than 15 minutes after posting the order, a buyer ID popped up to claim the full lot, Brother Yuan's general store. Jiang Huai's eyebrows lifted slightly. Far faster than he'd anticipated. It was no secret Zhou Huayuan was hoarding diesel en masse through the platform. His mutual aid program's core promise to recruits guaranteed regular material supplies upon joining, with diesel topping the supply checklist. Without steady fuel stocks, program members would start questioning why their hot meal rations had turned cold, and those warm bowls of soup formed the bedrock of trust holding the scheme together. A single batch of cold stew could shatter the confidence of 30 members overnight. Jiang Huai listed another 30 barrels at the same 150-point price. Brother Yuan's general store purchased the entire batch once more. Achi, posted as sentry at the warehouse entrance and popping back occasionally to haul barrels, lowered his voice over the walkie-talkie. Brother Huai, you're selling fuel straight to Brother Yuan. Isn't he just going to use it to grow his operation stronger? He thinks he's expanding his power base. In reality, he's transferring his points directly into my pockets. Night 3. Less than 20% of the warehouse diesel remained unloaded. Jiang Huai posted the final shipment of barrels to the trade platform. 3 hours prior, Zhou Huayuan had snapped up another batch listed by a disposable anonymous alt, 30 barrels total, and had already raised his purchase ceiling to 170 points per barrel, still bidding higher to secure every drop available. His logic was simple. Random users dumping cheap fuel online meant small outposts desperate to liquidate points, buy every barrel to stockpile reserves, guarantee unlimited fuel for the mutual aid program, resell surplus diesel at a steep markup during the next system auction. Zhou Huayuan had overlooked one critical detail. The cheap fuel flooding the market all originated from the very petrochemical warehouse he'd spent 3 days desperately hunting for with bounty rewards and city-wide search parties, all his points wasted on a false lead. Every barrel he overpaid for flowed straight into his inventory through untraceable throwaway accounts. He'd hiked his own buying rate to compete with Jiang Huai's discounted listings, voluntarily swallowing the full profit margin gap himself. Jiang Huai checked his system panel one last time. His point balance had jumped from 6,200 to 18,500. Zhou Huayuan's mass by post still refreshed repeatedly on the public channel. Wanted, unlimited diesel, premium points offered. Sellers left replies beneath it. Brother Yuan's still buying? Brother Yuan's known for fair deals, you won't lose out selling to him. Zhou Huayuan replied directly to the thread, still purchasing. All quantities accepted. I keep every promise I make. Jiang Huai closed all his anonymous sell listings. The mass buy requests continued scrolling on the public feed. Zhou Huayuan had no clue his supply line had been severed entirely. The armored truck completed its final delivery run and unloaded the last barrels. Old Zhao lingered for a long while at the underground depot entrance. 300 tons of diesel stacked 3 tiers high, separated by angle steel framing every 3 layers, thermometers spaced every 5 meters along the walls. He chalked 3 characters onto the final row of barrels, full stock, in his distinct 65th-style handwriting. He tucked the half-used chalk stub into his coat pocket. Even a broken piece of chalk counted as valuable supplies in the apocalypse. Achi leaned against the armored vehicle's tread gnawing compressed biscuits baked by Gu Xiaoyu, charred crusts spilling into the crook of his uniform sleeve. Brother Huai, I picked up a new term these past 3 days, arbitrage, right? Siphoning Brother Yuan's points off him. Points, not cash. Points are just another form of currency. Either way, he bought all the fuel, we walked away with his points, and he has no idea he got played. He'll figure it out tomorrow. Jiang Huai returned to the command room and opened his notebook, scrawling a line under the heading diesel operation, haul complete. 240 tons, 80 of the petrochemical warehouse reserves, routed anonymously to Brother Yuan's general store for point extraction. 60 tons, 20, retained as permanent base reserves in the underground fuel depot. Combined with auxiliary vehicle diesel traded from Old Zhang in the northeast and scattered supplementary fuel acquired via the trade platform, total base diesel stockpile stands at roughly 85 tons, enough to sustain operations for 18 months. He added a secondary notation beside it. Total diesel purchased by Jiang Huai Yuan equals 1.8 times the actual inventory of the petrochemical warehouse. The extra 0.8 tons purchased amounts to nothing but empty air. He'd spent thousands of points buying a non-existent surplus. Old Zhao knocked and stepped inside, clutching a newly drafted fire emergency response blueprint custom designed for the underground fuel depot. Xiao Jiang, we need to install an additional ventilation pipeline for the depot. Diesel fumes will accumulate on level 3. Any stray spark could trigger a disaster. He trailed off without finishing the grim prediction. Break ground tomorrow. Source all construction materials via the trade platform. Jiang Huai scanned the blueprint Old Zhao had drawn, every ventilation duct labeled with exact pipe diameter, gradient angle, and exhaust vent coordinates. Like every schematic Old Zhao produced, it was meticulously detailed and reassuringly thorough. Master Zhao, you hauled roughly 80 barrels these past 3 days? 82. Old Zhao clasped his hands behind his back, his thumbs still trembling faintly. Never moved this much fuel in my entire life. Gu Xiaoyu carried over a mug of hot water, a brand new enamel vessel replacing the chipped one from before. This mug had a smooth, leak-proof rim. You've barely slept in 72 hours. I'm fine. Every time you say fine, it never actually means that. I'm genuinely holding up. Gu Xiaoyu studied his face for 2 full seconds. How much did he lose overall? Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. Bounty rewards, price markups, excess stockpiling, at minimum 7,500 points. And he's still buying more. The second he notices every single seller vanishing simultaneously, he'll start cross-referencing his ledgers. Every lead he traces will dead end at a blank wall, with no trace of anyone behind the trades. You've calculated every variable down to the last detail. Occupational habit. As Gu Xiaoyu turned to head back to the medical ward, Jiang Huai called out after her, run a dedicated fuel line from the depot straight to the medical ward's heating unit. Store frostbite medication in a temperature-controlled cabinet, kept above 0 degrees Celsius at all times. Understood. Silence settled over the command room. Jiang Huai flipped his notebook to a fresh page beneath diesel operation and jotted a heading, information gap. Zhou Huayuan's total purchased diesel volume far exceeds the warehouse's actual reserves, yet he remains unaware of the discrepancy. The countdown triggered by this asymmetric intelligence cannot be halted. Every passing minute sees him purchasing another batch of non-existent fuel, each transaction padding my point balance further. The intelligence module tucked in the corner of his system panel hummed silently, seemingly dormant, but Jiang Huai knew Zhou Huayuan would inevitably reconcile his accounts sooner or later. Day 4. Zhou Huayuan uncovered the scheme at dawn on the 4th day. He sank into a leather armchair salvaged from a frozen shopping mall, for thick paper ledgers spread open across the table before him, physical records, the only medium immune to manipulated system data in the apocalypse. Every diesel purchase was hand-logged in ink, timestamp, barrel quantity, unit price, seller account ID, spanning 3 full pages of notes. Then he spotted the anomaly. On the 4th day, every diesel seller on the platform had vanished entirely, not a single listing left. The day prior, 7 or 8 fuel sales posts had littered the public feed. Now there were none at all. He messaged 3 regular suppliers to follow up. The first replied, no stock left. The second wrote, sold out completely. The third told him the truth, Brother Yuan, it's not that I won't sell, my entire supply chain's dried up. Every drop of diesel across all of Jiangqing has been bought out. Zhou Huayuan flipped his ledger back to the first page, circling the timestamp marking the first anonymous discounted fuel batch he'd purchased. He traced the timeline chronologically backward, fake coordinates sent to lure search parties. His men wasted a full day scavenging the empty eastern depot. Thousands of points squandered on the worthless bounty extraction operations launched at the real petrochemical warehouse. That same night cheap fuel listings began flooding the platform. He bought every single barrel offered over 3 sleepless days and nights. Every supplier's stock vanished all at once, in the exact same moment. The timestamp of every discounted listing landed perfectly dead center within his peak high-price purchasing window. The very first batch, 20 barrels priced at 150 points, had appeared 12 minutes after he raised his official buying rate from 165 to 170. Back then he'd thought he'd stumbled on an unmissable bargain. In hindsight, those listings always materialized the instant he hiked his bid, consistently 10% cheaper than his posted rate, surfacing precisely when his point budget sat at its largest surplus. It was as if someone had been watching his panel in real time to time every sale. Jiang Huai. He closed the ledger, tapping 2 slow knuckles against the leather cover. Someone's using my own buying orders to bleed me dry of my points. The underlings standing beside him exchanged confused glances. One brave subordinate spoke up. Brother Yuan, does someone have the ability to predict every single move you make? Jiang Huai ignored the question and pulled up his system panel to replay every step of the operation in reverse. The false coordinates had arrived from a disposable alt account that deleted itself the moment the message sent. Simultaneously, an unknown party had broken into the real petrochemical warehouse and pumped fuel nonstop for 3 days straight. The extracted diesel was split into batches listed anonymously via temporary throwaway IDs, always 20 barrels per listing, always priced under his ceiling. Every barrel he'd overpaid for could have been seized free of charge if he'd found the warehouse first. He now held a massive stockpile of diesel acquired at an inflated premium, a point deficit of at least 7,500, an empty warehouse stripped bare, and an adversary who had never once revealed their face throughout the entire operation. Jiang Huai shut the ledger gently. Over 100 separate purchase transactions, every seller tied to a self-terminating temporary alt account. He ordered his men to investigate each ID one by one, only to receive identical automated replies. All temporary accounts automatically erase post-transaction, protected under platform anonymity protocols with no traceable metadata. He's hidden safely behind the anonymity shield for every single trade. Jiang Huai stood and addressed his underlings flatly. Leave me. The 2 men traded a look and filed out of the command room, the door clicking shut softly behind them. He lingered in the leather chair for a long stretch, the glow of his system panel washing over his face as his mass, by requests, continued refreshing endlessly on the public feed, drawing 0 new offers. He opened a new public bounty post. Wanted, all intelligence related to user ID Jiang. Any information accepted, personal activity zones, supply sources, team size, trading preferences. Reward, 2,000 points. He waited an hour in front of the panel after publishing the bounty. Views topped 300, with 42 comments total. 20 posters asked, "What's wrong, Brother Yuan?" 12 spammed supportive messages of "Stay strong, Brother Yuan." 8 queried the details of the alleged scheme, required to mark the post as read, but not a single person submitted actionable intelligence. Over 600 trade records linked to the ID Jiang existed on the platform, yet nobody could name the person behind the alias, their location, or the size of their faction. Jiang Huai viewed the bounty post from inside his command room. Chi poked his head around the doorframe. Brother Huai, Brother Yuan's offering 2,000 points for intel on you. Want me to leak fabricated misinformation to throw him off track? No need. Jiang Huai saved a screenshot of the bounty to Jiang Huai's case file. 2,000 points for a single person's identity. Human lives rarely valued that highly in this apocalypse. Jiang Huai was truly unraveling. He jotted a line in his notebook. Opponent has identified the asymmetric intelligence gap. Attempting to close the information deficit by a point bounty. Reaction delay of approximately 48 hours, a full day slower than projected. He added an accompanying footnote. 0 intelligence submissions to the bounty reveal Zhou's influence on the platform is far weaker than he believes. No survivor is willing to risk crossing the unknown Jiang for a mere 2,000 points. The complete lack of informants itself constitutes critical intelligence. The loyalty of his mutual aid program network is worth less than 2,000 points to its members. Chi poked his head through the doorway again. Brother Huai, what are you writing down? Have you finished updating your 3-day scouting map? All done. Bring it here. Chi handed over a revised draft. His handwriting remained messy, but the map held far denser tactical detail than the previous version. 6 new supply caches were marked, 2 small survivor outposts, a vehicle repair shop and an abandoned grain silo, and a hidden shortcut winding through northern district alleyways to the industrial zone, cutting 2 full hours off travel time during blizzards. Jiang Huai cross-referenced the hand-drawn map against intelligence logged on his system panel, circling one major zone, the industrial complex. Chi had marked 3 large question marks beside it, annotated, vast compound, unexplored interior. A system notification popped up on his panel. New supply category unlocked, 7 out of 10. 3 more resource types required to reach level 3 intelligence clearance. Chi, come with me tomorrow. We'll take the armored truck. Where to? Industrial zone. Mass supply sweep. Sweep what exactly? Stuff I can't even name yet. Chi scratched the bridge of his nose. Old Zhao happened to walk past. He was drafting a fire emergency plan for the new oil depot on the 3rd level and glanced up. Jiang, that line of thinking doesn't sound like you. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. The system rewards new unregistered goods. Anything it's never scanned before earns bonus points. That's why we're hunting down supplies no one else deems valuable. Like what? Machine tool spare parts, military-grade lubricant, industrial antifreeze, special alloy steel. Nobody fights over these in the apocalypse, but each unrecorded category grants an extra 500 system points once logged. Old Zhao set his blueprint down. I've inspected the civil air defense ventilation ducts out in the industrial zone before. The complex runs deep underground, with several subterranean workshops. If you're heading there, I can draw you a route map. Draw it now. Old Zhao pulled a pencil from his pocket. He always carried one on his person. He squatted down and sketched the industrial zone's road network on the reverse side of an old engineering drawing. Jiang Huai watched lines take shape beneath his hand. The nearly 50-year-old man knew every inch of Jiangqing's above-ground and underground terrain as intimately as the lines on his own fingerprints. The soft, steady scratch of pencil on paper filled the silence. Off to the side, Achi polished his dagger, stealing glances at Jiang Huai's notebook crammed wall-to-wall with writing. Brother Huai, you filled so many pages, will you publish a book someday? Jiang Huai did not lift his gaze. No one prints books after the apocalypse. Then who's all this writing for? Myself. He snapped the cap back onto his pen. I forgot too many vital details in my past life. Writing them down means I won't lose them again. Achi did not fully grasp the meaning, but seeing Jiang Huai close the notebook, he held his tongue. Gu Xiaoyu poked her head out from the medical bay. Achi, that gash on your hand needs daily dressing changes. Don't think I haven't noticed you've skipped 3 sessions straight. I'm coming right now. Achi stowed his dagger and darted toward the medical wing. Jiang Huai watched his retreating back and scrawled tiny script along the notebook's margin. Achi skipped 3 wound treatments. He forgot entirely. Remind Gu Xiaoyu to check on him. Jiangcheng Industrial Zone. Before the cold catastrophe, this district had served as the city's industrial heart. Interconnected steel mills, machine tool factories, chemical plants, and auto parts markets stretching endlessly, smokestacks outnumbering every tree. Now every chimney stood frozen solid as an ice pillar, snow piled higher than a grown man atop factory roofs, and rust spread 10 times faster across iron gates at minus 60 degrees Celsius, a frost-induced corrosion Old Zhao called cryorust. The armored vehicle rumbled to a halt on the industrial zone's main thoroughfare. Jiang Huai stepped out, the system's scanning function already active on his interface. Old Zhao's hand-drawn route map was taped beside the dashboard, marking every factory from Zone A through F, labeling major machinery and industry type for each building. Jiang Huai skimmed it once to memorize the path, then pushed open the passenger door. First stop, the machine tool factory. He shoved open a half-collapsed iron gate, and the workshop plunged into darkness, like an abandoned mine shaft. Jiang Huai swept his flashlight beam across rows of neatly aligned lathes draped under untouched oil tarpaulins. Over a full month into the extreme cold, this workshop's gate had remained intact. No other survivors had ventured this far. The industrial zone lay too remote, too deep into the blizzard's unforgiving terrain for most to risk the journey. A system pop-up flashed. New commodity detected. Precision lathe times 12. Added to database. Bonus points plus 500. Nearby, Achi hauled a crate of cutting fluid, pried the lid open, and gagged at the pungent fumes. Brother Huai, this stuff reeks like urine. The system only cares that it's unregistered stock. The system likes things that smell like urine? The system likes items no other user has scanned before. Scent is irrelevant. Second sight, an auto parts warehouse stacked floor to ceiling with automotive components. Jiang Huai scanned each piece one by one: piston rings, cylinder liners, crankshafts, drive shafts. Every skin triggered a fresh alert. New commodity logged. Bonus points plus 200. By the 7th unique part, his tracker updated. Unique new item category scanned. 5 out of 10. Achi knelt beside a pile of dust-caked metal crates. Brother Huai, this box is covered in English writing. Jiang Huai walked over. The print was German, not English. Inside rested a complete set of automotive ECU control units sealed in moisture-proof film. The system's notification stretched longer than any prior alert. High-precision automotive electronic control unit times 12 sets detected. Uncatalogued resource type. Bonus points plus 800. Jiang Huai closed the crate lid. Load this. Stow it furthest inside the armored vehicle for shock protection. Third location. A structure resembling a derelict chemical plant. Stepping inside, Jiang Huai noticed a complete absence of dust on the floor. A faint light glowed deep within the workshop, not electric, but an alcohol burner fed with industrial spirits. A figure stood behind the flame, wrapped in thick warwear cotton, gripping a steel pipe. The man was around 40, sharp, chiseled facial features. A dozen shadowy figures lingered behind him. Several fed scrap industrial lumber into an iron barrel stove, firelight gilding their ash-streaked faces. People are already camped here. Jiang Huai halted his steps, tilting his flashlight beam downward to rest at his own feet. We're only gathering supplies. We have no intention of seizing your shelter. Take whatever you came for, but do not venture deeper inside. Jiang Huai fixed his gaze on the steel pipe clutched tight in the stranger's hands. Its tip trembled faintly despite his rigid grip. This man had endured -60-degree weather in a drafty workshop, surviving on scrap industrial waste for heat, and it was unclear how much longer they could hold out. Yet he made no plea for aid, clinging stubbornly to his pride out of unearned distrust. Achi leaned in to whisper beside Jiang Huai's ear. "Brother Huai, there's warm smoke rising from their chimney. Roughly 20 people holed up here burning factory scraps for warmth. I spotted 2 small children wrapped in quilts." Jiang Huai nodded. He retracted the system's scanning radius to avoid penetrating the inner workshop, then turned to leave. Achi hesitated a beat before rushing after him. "Won't you invite them to join our base? Those who show open hostility are never pressed. It's a waste of breath. We'll reach them another way." That same night, Jiang Huai pulled up the coordinates Achi had marked for the encampment, Industrial Zone Section C. He posted 3 anonymous delivery orders on the trading platform, 20 sets of thermal winter wear, 5 crates of compressed biscuits, 10 tubes of frostbite ointment. No sender ID, no attached message, no demands attached. All 3 shipments were scheduled for midnight delivery. The pale blue teleport glow bloomed unseen in total darkness, depositing the supplies silently beside the workshop's back exit. Noon the next day. A private message pinged his system panel, sender ID, Old Gua. Message text, "What's your game here?" Jiang Huai replied simply, "No hidden agenda. You suffer from the cold, and I hold surplus supplies." The other party fell silent for a long stretch. Jiang Huai did not press for a response. On the 3rd day, another anonymous supply shipment arrived, 1 crate of water purification tablets, 1 portable diesel space heater. Still no signature, no strings attached. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Old Gua messaged again, "What exactly are you hoping to gain from us?" Jiang Huai typed his reply, "I don't want any of you freezing to death. 20 skilled factory workers, your expertise would be a terrible loss to waste to hypothermia." Another lengthy pause, then a reply appeared. "How did you figure out we're factory laborers?" Section C Industrial Zone, warm smoke from your chimney, burning sorted industrial scrap. Ordinary survivors cannot distinguish usable combustible waste from toxic materials. Only trained factory staff would separate them properly. 5 minutes later, Old Gua sent a far longer message than all prior exchanges combined. "My name is Gua Jianjun, retired combat engineer. 23 of us total, former machinists from this workshop plus our family members. It's not that we refuse to leave. 1 elderly welder's legs have suffered severe frostbite and cannot be carried over rough terrain. If you truly can offer assistance." Frostbite. His skin is blackened all the way below the knees. The fever has raged for 2 full days. Jiang Huai pushed open the medical bay door. Gu Xiaoyu was taking a student's blood pressure. "Pack your equipment. We're heading to the industrial zone. Severe frostbite requiring amputation. Can you perform the procedure?" Gu Xiaoyu set down the sphygmomanometer. "I can." She retrieved an aluminum medical case from the shelf, one Jiang Huai had never seen before. Catching his curious stare, she explained, "I assembled this myself, a dedicated amputation kit. I knew we'd need it sooner or later." Jiang Huai glanced at her but said nothing, though she heard him pause in the doorway for a single heartbeat. The armored vehicle carried Gu Xiaoyu and her medical case into the industrial zone. En route, Jiang Huai listed a new sales posting on the trading platform, 12 precision lathes, 12 sets high-precision automotive ECU units, 200 liters special industrial lubricant. He set a steep asking price, signaling no urgent rush to sell. Comments flooded in instantly. "Who possesses this much heavy industrial equipment? Is this the same user who sold skill manuals last time? ID, Jiang. It's him again." Jiang Huai ignored the comment thread and checked his system tracker. Unique new commodity categories logged, 8 out of 10. 2 more types remained to complete the tally. The armored vehicle pulled up outside Old Gua's workshop. The man who'd gripped the steel pipe earlier stood empty-handed this time. He spotted Gu Xiaoyu trailing behind Jiang Huai, clutching the compact aluminum medical case she'd carried all the way through sub-zero winds. "You've truly brought a doctor with you?" Gu Xiaoyu said nothing. She stepped into the workshop, knelt beside the elderly welder, and pulled back the quilt covering his legs. After one quick assessment, she lifted her gaze to Jiang Huai. "We cannot save the tissue below his knees, but we can save his life. Fetch a clean table and boil as much hot water as possible." Old Gua studied Jiang Huai. The young man in black-rimmed glasses spoke at an unhurried pace, yet every statement brooked no argument. He accepted a pack of compressed biscuits, his fingers lingering along the cardboard edge. Over a month into the apocalypse, this marked the first time anyone had given him vital supplies without demanding payment or favors in return. "Can she handle the operation alone?" Jiang Huai glanced deep into the workshop. Gu Xiaoyu had already laid out every surgical instrument in sterilizing trays, bone saw, hemostatic forceps, suturing needles, each piece arranged in precise order. Her hands remained perfectly steady. Before the surgery began, she lifted her head and locked eyes with Jiang Huai across 20 meters of workshop floor, separated only by her aluminum medical case, for one quiet second. She doesn't need assistance. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. She's more than capable on her own. Old Guo tore open the biscuit pack, and the 22 factory workers gathered around, each taking one piece. The alcohol burner's flame flickered, casting warm light across every somber face. No one spoke a word, until Gu Xiaoyu's voice echoed from the back of the workshop, past the hemostatic forceps. We begin. The amputation surgery lasted 90 minutes. When Gu Xiaoyu stepped out of the workshop, her disposable medical gloves were soaked crimson with blood. She rubbed her gloved palms in the snow, staining the white drifts pale pink, then peeled the gloves off and tossed them into a waste bin. He survived. Jiang Huai handed her a chipped enamel mug filled with hot water, its smooth, rounded rim leak-proof. That aluminum surgical kit, when did you prepare it? The second day after the base renovation finished. Old Zhao dug out a full set of vintage manual bone saws from warehouse storage. None were rusted. I practiced every possible frostbite surgical procedure on simulated scenarios with only a dummy patient. She dumped the leftover hot water onto the snow, where it instantly froze into tiny ice beads. You were right to plan ahead. Our frostbite ointment stock will never last. Amputations were inevitable sooner or later. Old Guo emerged from the workshop and walked to stand before Jiang Huai, half a head taller with the solid, broad frame of a retired combat engineer. He remained silent for 2 full beats. I'll bring all 23 of our people back to your base with you. You're agreeing to join our settlement? We are. Jiang Huai pushed his glasses into place. The base has one core rule: no single leader. Everyone contributes specialized labor. Your crew will oversee maintenance for all industrial machinery. Old Zhao has been waiting for skilled assistance. Who is Old Zhao? An older man who drafts engineering blueprints far better than you can. Old Zhao poked his head out from behind the armored vehicle. He'd spent the entire ride mapping transport routes for hauling industrial equipment, finishing 4 full drafts. Master Guo, are you proficient in pipe fitting? We've just built a new 3-level underground oil depot, and the fire isolation valves haven't been mounted yet. Old Guo stared at the detailed blueprints in Old Zhao's grasp for 5 full seconds, then uttered a line that kept the elder engineer grinning for the entire day. Your drafting work surpasses my own. On the drive back to the base, Jiang Huai sat in the passenger seat with the system scanning module active. The armored vehicle passed the industrial zone's innermost sector, an abandoned military liaison office with official sealing tape plastered across its iron door. Chi slit the tape open with his dagger to reveal rows of metal storage lockers within. Jiang Huai pulled open the rearmost cabinet, uncovering 2 rare stockpiles. First, a complete CNC machine tool control system packaged in a crate stamped with classified lettering, Commission of Science, Technology and Industry for National Defense, top secret. Beside it sat a crate of military green metal canisters labeled Arctic-grade antifreeze. Minimum temperature tolerance, -85 degrees Celsius. Jiang Huai positioned both crates within the system's scanning radius. The panel flashed twice in succession. First alert: new commodity detected, industrial CNC control system ×1. Uncatalogued resource type. Bonus points plus 800. Unique new item category scanned, 9 out of 10. Second alert: new commodity detected, military Arctic antifreeze ×200 liters. Uncatalogued resource type. Bonus points plus 1000. Unique new item category scanned, 10 out of 10. System upgrade requirements fully met. A glowing gold notification popped up on the interface, distinct from the plain white text of standard trade alerts, the same golden hue used for Zhou Huayuan's auction broadcast announcements. Doomsday Exchange System upgrading to LV3, confirm upgrade. Jiang Huai tapped confirm. Multiple stat lines refreshed simultaneously across the screen. Daily trade limit, 515 transactions, single shipment weight cap, 100 kilograms, 2 metric tons. New unlocked feature, trade intelligence monitor. Input custom keywords for automatic real-time tracking and push notifications for matching listings. Maximum concurrent tracked keywords, 3. Jiang Huai deliberated for roughly 3 seconds, then typed 3 search terms into the monitor: diesel, snowtrack, armored vehicle, Brother Yuan's general store. The system instantly generated its first intelligence brief. Tracked keyword: Brother Yuan's general store. Target purchased massive quantities of construction materials, cement, steel rebar, thermal insulation panels, over the past 72 hours, total expenditure exceeding 12,000 points. Deduction: target's base expansion exceeds 2,000 square meters. Tracked keyword: diesel. Target has ceased all diesel procurement orders. Deduction: fuel stockpiles are full, or they have abandoned further fuel accumulation. Tracked keyword: snowtrack, armored vehicle. No matching transactions recorded to date. Jiang Huai stared at the second entry. He stopped buying diesel entirely. He's worked out the math. Old Zhao leaned forward from the back seat. Worked out what? The total volume of diesel he purchased exceeds the actual reserves held in our petrochemical warehouse. Sometime in the early hours of the fourth day, he cross-referenced his procurement and resale timelines and spotted the mismatch between order quantities and available stock. He now realizes someone siphoned massive points by arbitraging against his bulk buy orders. But without complete transaction ledgers, he cannot calculate exactly how many points he lost. What will he do next? Wait. Wait for you to make your next move? He's waiting to play his next card. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. He knows a rival is sabotaging his operations, but he has no clue who we are, how large our group is, or our motives. His only viable response is accelerating base expansion, fortifying his territory with the overpriced diesel he hoarded, while hunting for new sources of point revenue. The armored vehicle rolled through the base's entry tunnel. Old Guo led his 23 factory workers down from a refitted cargo truck. Old Zhao had restored a derelict industrial zone truck using scrap steel pipe and thermal insulation material he'd salvaged. The workers stood on the first level's platform, gazing upward at the cool white ceiling panel lights. Their previous shelter had been a drafty tin workshop heated by toxic factory waste, where every night someone woke shivering from hypothermia. A young machinist reached out to touch one light fixture, flinching back with a small laugh when static electricity pricked his fingertip. Gu Xiaoyu changed the dressings on the elderly welder's amputation wound. The man remained half delirious, murmuring an indistinct name, possibly his wife, daughter, or merely someone he'd known before the catastrophe. Gu Xiaoyu pulled the quilt snugly around his shoulders. Dinner in the mess hall. Jiang Huai lingered beside the stainless steel long tables. Over 60 survivors now filled the communal space. The student survivors huddled together at one end. Auto repair mechanics occupied 2 full tables, while Achi sat in the corner with his new intelligence assistant, a middle-aged man who had defected from Brother Yuan's mutual aid program. Old Gua and his factory crew clutched bowls of steaming broth, unsure where to seat themselves. Old Zhao waved them over. Plenty of empty seats here. Jiang Huai said nothing. He leaned against the mess hall wall with his enamel mug, watching more than 60 people share a warm meal in the 18-degree underground bunker. The trade intelligence module hummed silently in the background of his system panel, running round-the-clock surveillance on his 3 keywords, 3 unblinking watchful eyes permanently monitoring the trading network. A fresh intelligence alert popped up, tied to the 3rd tracked keyword. Keyword: Snowtrack armored vehicle linked to a recent transaction. Buyer ID: Hanxue. Anonymous seller. Shipment contents: 20 tactical vests, 2,000 rifle cartridges, 40 hand grenades. Transaction completed 1 hour prior. Jiang Huai straightened up. He set his enamel mug down on the stainless steel tabletop, the base tapping against the metal with a soft clink. Armored snow vehicles, diesel fuel, ammunition, 3 key terms clicked together in his mind. The ID Cold Snow was no ordinary survivor. Her procurement lists bore no resemblance to random scavengers. Every order was sized to platoon-level military rations. Military-grade supplies, bulk one-way purchases with 0 resales. Ex-military garrison personnel, used to leading troops. Jiang Huai flipped open a blank page in his notebook and scrawled the name Cold Snow at the top. The next line read, Military Survivor Group, estimated minimum 10 members, organized formation with firepower. Low trading frequency, but massive single-order volumes, likely trapped in a fixed location, the trade platform their sole supply lifeline. He closed the notebook. The top intelligence monitor alert on his system panel was still flashing, tracking the keyword Brother Yuan's general goods. Construction material acquisitions accelerating rapidly, 16 new orders posted in the past 24 hours. The diesel resource war was over, yet Zhou Huayuan continued building his walls. He was sinking 12,000 points worth of building supplies into a fortress, erecting barriers against an enemy whose identity he could not even name. Meanwhile, Jiang Huai had planted 3 unblinking watchful eyes on Zhou Huayuan's wall. Jiang Huai pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, faint light from the 3 monitored keywords glinting off the lenses. Diesel. Acquisition orders halted. Zhou Huayuan held stockpiles, but dared not buy more. Armored snow vehicles, linked to Cold Snow, an unexpected new lead no one else had spotted. Brother Yuan's general goods, accelerated construction material buys, 12,000 points poured into a defensive wall for an unknown foe. Achi poked his head in the doorway. Brother Huai, Old Guo's crew got the industrial machine tools wired up. Old Zhao says they're functional. Only the CNC control system's giving us trouble. It's all written in English and none of us can operate it. It's German. Huh. Jiang Huai offered no explanation. Beneath the Cold Snow entry in his notebook, he jotted 4 more characters. Phase 3. Make contact. The instant the system finished its level upgrade, a brief flash crossed the panel, not a standard feature unlock notification, but a line of text Jiang Huai had seen once before. "Welcome back, Jiang Huai. We've waited for you all your life." The words vanished just as quickly as they appeared, identical to the moment he first activated the system. Jiang Huai's finger hovered over the panel for a full second. The system knew his name. It had known from day one, yet it had never elaborated on that cryptic message. A supplementary data alert popped up from the intelligence module, tracking the keyword Mutual Aid Program. Registered membership had surged from 30 people a month prior to 120. Growth was slowing, yet total headcount kept climbing. Jiang Huai scribbled a note in his notebook. Ponzi scheme expansion phase. Growth rate peaking, inflection point approaching. He shut the notebook. The blizzard still raged outside the windows. Warm lamplight glowed quietly behind the base's blast-proof doors for its 60-odd residents. 85 tons of diesel fuel filled the underground oil depot, 60 tons of crude stock hauled from the petrochemical warehouse, plus the reserve fuel from old Zhang's armored vehicle, and roughly 20 tons accumulated through scattered platform trades. It was enough to power the base for a full year and a half. On the system panel, 3 unblinking surveillance feeds quietly tracked every transaction, keyword, and user ID across the trade platform, waiting for Zhou Huayuan to play his next hand. Phase 2 complete. After writing Phase 3, make contact in his notebook, Jiang Huai did not immediately send a private message to Cold Snow. He followed his usual routine first, combed through every trade log. The intelligence module hummed silently on his system panel, its 3 tracked keywords shining like searchlights. He clicked the linked push notification tagged Armored Snow Vehicle, but did not linger on that single order. Instead, he pulled up Cold Snow's full public transaction history spanning from the 5th day of the extreme cold to the present. 47 records in total. He read every single one from start to finish. First transaction, day 5 of the deep freeze, 500 rounds of 7.62mm rifle ammunition. Payment tendered in diesel fuel, unit price 8% above market average. Jiang Huai noted in his notebook, new participant, desperate, unfamiliar with market pricing. Second transaction, day 7, 10 tactical vests. Third, day 9, 30 crates of military field rations. Fourth, day 12, 20 tubes of frostbite ointment. Fifth, day 14, 15 fragmentation grenades. Every item conformed to official military standard specifications. 0 civilian bulletproof vests purchased, 0 shoddy counterfeit gear. Jiang Huai's finger paused on the panel. Anyone capable of consistently sourcing genuine military-grade supplies within the first week of the apocalypse was either former garrison military personnel or had direct ties to the military compound. Ordinary survivors could not distinguish standardized military models. They would simply search for bulletproof vests instead of tactical vests or just generic ammo, without specifying the 7.62mm caliber. She listed precise technical specifications in every purchase order. Only industry insiders would understand those details. He scrolled further down the timeline. Day 16, 1,000 rounds of 7.62mm rifle ammo. Day 18, 30 rolls of tourniquets. Day 20, 20 boxes of antibiotics. Day 22, 800 rounds of 7.62mm ammo. Same day, 30 tubes of frostbite ointment plus 500 liters of diesel fuel. Day 23, 10 fragmentation grenades. Jiang Huai mapped the timeline into a clear chart. The timing of her bulk purchases did not follow normal scavenger patterns. First week, small volume, diverse orders placed at steady intervals, testing supply channels. Late second week, order frequency doubled, item categories narrowed down exclusively to ammunition and medical supplies, with all major bulk buys concentrated within a 5-day window. Those 5 days coincided with the worst blizzard recorded on the platform, when overall trading volume plummeted citywide. He pushed his glasses up. She's preparing for combat. Ordinary survivors huddled inside shelters during blizzards. She acted in complete opposition, as if she anticipated an incoming attack taking advantage of the snowstorm. Jiang Huai began tracing the identities of her suppliers backward. The 3 user IDs who sold her 7.62mm ammunition all posted listings between 2 and 4 in the early morning, marked at below market prices for quick liquidation. Their accounts were registered in the 3rd week of the extreme cold, and they only sold ammunition, never placing buy orders of their own. Jiang Huai cross-referenced all 3 traders' transaction logs. They operated with identical patterns: low pricing for instant sales, no haggling, minimal platform activity after completing trades. A military armory, Jiang Huai wrote in his notebook. Or a logistics depot. Someone inside is smuggling stock out to sell. But her recent restock orders indicate the supply line has been cut off. Cut off, Either the smuggler was caught, reassigned, or the ammunition she previously bought had been expended in combat, explaining her emergency restock of 800 rounds on day 22. The volume of expended rounds must have been substantial. Achi poked his head through the doorway. Brother Huai, aren't you going to sleep? Not tired. Who are you investigating this time? Jiang Huai did not answer, his gaze fixed on Cold Snow's transaction records. 47 purchase orders, all logged over the past 20-odd days, not a single resale listing posted by her. She never sold anything, only bought. There were only two logical explanations for a user who solely consumed supplies on the Apocalypse trade platform without ever liquidating stock. Either she held an external off-platform supply source, or she was prohibited from reselling. All her equipment was official military issue, forbidden to circulate among civilian survivors. He flipped to a fresh notebook page and wrote the name Cold Snow at the top, jotting down observations line by line. Procurement categories: standard military ordnance, primarily 7.62mm rounds, military field rations, official tactical vests. Sourced through non-civilian channels. Purchasing pattern: buy only, no resales. Deduction: issued military equipment, resale strictly prohibited. Group size: single bulk order of 800 to 1,000 rifle rounds matches the standard ammo allocation for one infantry squad, 6 to 8 personnel. Current status: massive restock order on day 22 covering ammunition, medicine, and fuel simultaneously, full combat readiness preparations. Ammo supply line: severed. Deduction: depot staff caught or reassigned. Core verdict: ex-military personnel, squad of 6 to 8 members, trapped in a fixed location, currently under siege or imminent attack. He set down his pen and stared at the final line. Trapped under attack. This was no mere guess, it was a definitive conclusion drawn purely from transaction data. Procurement logs did not lie. Anyone rushing to restock 800 rounds of ammo plus 30 rolls of tourniquets knew heavy casualties were imminent. Achi lingered in the doorway, the gauze wrapped around his wrist slipping loose. Gu Xiaoyu had changed his bandages 2 days prior, and he had neglected to get a fresh dressing. Achi, on your hand-drawn map you marked several question marks around the abandoned military camp to the north. 3 markers. What about it? I need you to scout there tomorrow. No need to enter the compound. Observe only the perimeter. Check for smoke, any signs of human activity. You think that's where the IDs group is holed up? There's a user ID operating up north, and they're under siege. Jiang Huai capped his pen. Confirm the location first, then we initiate contact. Achi nodded and sprinted off. Jiang Huai switched his system panel to the private message window, recipient, Cold Snow. He typed a line, deleted it, typed another, erased it again. It was not that he lacked words, but that he deliberated over what identity to adopt to open the conversation. If he bluntly messaged her, "I know you're trapped with 6 to 8 soldiers and running low on ammo," she would block him instantly. Someone capable of deducing every detail of her predicament purely from trade logs would strike her as far more dangerous than the raiders besieging her. Trust was the foundation of cooperation, safety the foundation of trust, and safety meant letting the opposing party believe they retained the upper hand. Therefore, he could not reveal the full extent of what he had uncovered. He needed a mask, an ordinary trader who had merely noticed her consistent purchasing patterns and sought to cut platform commission fees for mutual benefit. Not dangerously perceptive, just shrewd enough to be useful. Jiang Huai retyped a message, this time without deleting it. Your ammunition purchases incur a 5% platform transaction fee. We can complete trades off the official channel, and I will waive all commission charges for you. He hit send and left the panel open. When Achi returned, he found Jiang Huai staring fixedly at the screen. Brother Huai, did she reply yet? Not yet. But you only sent the message a minute ago. She will respond. Achi scratched his head and wandered over to sprawl across his pile of hand-drawn maps, sketching newly discovered scavenging sites. 2 minutes later, Jiang Huai's panel lit up with an incoming private message from Cold Snow, sent 3 minutes after his original note. The message contained only 2 characters. Who are you? Jiang Huai pushed his glasses up, the 2 words reflected clearly on the lenses. She had not asked, how did you find out, or what do you mean? Her first priority was verifying his identity, classic military instinct, overriding all other concerns. She cared little that her purchasing habits had been observed. What mattered was the identity of the person watching her. He added a new line at the bottom of Cold Snow's notebook entry. Response time, 3 minutes. Quick reflexes, strong defensive instincts, unflappable under pressure. He closed the notebook and stared at the 2-word inquiry on the screen. The blizzard outside Jiangcheng still howled, shards of ice clattering against the blast-proof metal doors like tiny hammers tapping nonstop. Warm lamplight burned softly for 60 survivors deep within the underground base. Cold Snow. Phase 1 complete. Cold Snow's question, who are you? Hung unanswered in the chat window. It was not that Jiang Huai intended to ignore her, he chose to wait. Roughly 5 minutes ticked by, and Cold Snow's user status remained online the entire time. She sent no follow-up questions, no urgent prompts, and did not block his message thread. A female military officer trapped in an abandoned barracks, receiving an unsolicited private message from a total stranger. Instead of closing the window immediately, she waited, forcing him to reveal his hand first. Jiang Huai adjusted his glasses. She was evaluating him, just as he had evaluated her. He abandoned any attempt to explain his identity and sent a formal quotation slip directly instead. 500 rounds of 7.62mm rifle ammunition. Unit price: 97% of the platform average market rate. Payment terms: cash on delivery. You set the drop-off coordinates. Delivery window: 30 seconds after order confirmation. Cold Snow replied instantly, "What guarantee do I have you will deliver the goods before I pay? Your transaction record speaks for itself." "What do you mean?" 47 purchase orders, 0 returns, 0 dispute filings, perfect seller ratings across every completed trade. A scammer would never waste 20-odd days maintaining a flawless account. The effort would not be worthwhile. Silence fell on the other end of the line. Jiang Huai leaned back in his chair. A Chi poked half his body through the doorway. He had returned early from scouting the northern abandoned military camp per Jiang Huai's orders. "Brother Huai, there's smoke rising from the camp compound." "What kind of smoke?" "Not thick black smolder from burning scrap waste, thin pale white fumes, the kind produced by military solid fuel tablets. Also, 3 separate patrol routes circle the perimeter. They're not official military, their clothing and firearms are mismatched, yet their patrol formation is highly professional, rotating cross-post sentries every 2 hours. Jiang Huai circled the military camp location on his map. "How many hostiles?" "I spotted 3 patrol squads of 3 men each. Accounting for rotating shifts, a minimum of 12 raiders encircle the entire compound. They haven't launched a direct assault, only loiter outside as if waiting for something. They're wearing the group down, waiting for their ammo and medical supplies to run dry." Jiang Huai set his pencil down on the map. "Any sign of anyone exiting the camp?" "Nobody left the compound, but the chimney's still smoking, proof there are survivors inside." Also, a Chi hesitated briefly. "Bandages are hung out to dry beside the chimney. Hanging damp bandages in -60-degree temperatures means their casualty count is rising and medical stockpiles are nearly exhausted." Jiang Huai nodded. A Chi's reconnaissance skills had improved drastically over the past month. He now caught subtle details like drying bandages. Jiang Huai jotted a note in his notebook. "Cold Snow's squad has wounded personnel, medical supplies depleted." She purchased 30 tubes of frostbite ointment on day 22, which would not suffice with growing casualties. The system panel lit up with Cold Snow's reply. "Cash on delivery. I will send coordinates." A string of numerical coordinates followed, matching exactly the abandoned military camp location He had marked on the map. Jiang Huai gave no indication he already knew the site, simply posted the 500-round ammo listing to the trade platform with payment terms set to cash on delivery, recipient tagged as Cold Snow, and hit confirm. A pale blue transport light flickered briefly inside the warehouse, and the crate of ammunition vanished from Jiangcheng Base's weapons rack. 30 seconds elapsed. The system's status updated. Buyer outstanding payment. A Chi stared at the outstanding payment label on the panel. "Brother Huai, aren't you worried she'll refuse to pay entirely?" "I am worried." Jiang Huai slid the panel aside. "But fear solves nothing. She is no ordinary customer, an officer leading 6 squad members. People like her repay trust with loyalty. If you nitpick every small transaction, they will treat you as an outsider." "How do you know she's an officer?" "Her procurement lists." A Chi fell silent. He had watched Jiang Huai deduce people's traits, daily supplies, and even physical details purely from their trade logs before, often exaggerated, yet rarely far from the truth. 3 hours later, an alert popped up on the system panel. Cold Snow had completed payment. 500 liters of diesel fuel, plus an extra 50 liters. A 2-word addendum accompanied the transfer: interest. Jiang Huai stared at the surplus 50 liters of diesel. "Interest? Not thank you." This woman hated owing favors. Debts of gratitude were intangible and hard to repay. Financial interest was a concrete balance that could be fully settled. He sent a reply: payment confirmed. 500 plus 50 liters diesel received. Interest noted. Cold Snow replied instantly: "Who exactly are you?" "No one else in Jiangcheng can fulfill cash on delivery orders. Ordinary traders do not keep 500 rounds of military ammo in ready stock." Jiang Huai's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her question was not idle curiosity. She could judge what constituted viable ammo stockpiles within the city, proving she had operated within this region long before the extreme cold hit. "Just someone who knows how to source and trade supplies," he typed back. "I've asked 3 times now." "I am aware." Silence stretched longer this time. Jiang Huai did not rush her response. He updated the underground oil depot inventory log. Current reserves stood at 300 tons plus 550 liters. Old Zhao passed by the doorway, glanced at the figure on the panel, nodded, and walked away. When the panel lit up again, the message was no longer 2 short words, but a full paragraph. There are 6 of us, all active duty soldiers, 3 women, 3 men. We've been trapped inside the old military barracks for 41 days. Roughly 12 to 15 raiders surround the compound. They will attack us if we venture out to scavenge supplies. If we stay inside, they simply wait for our resources to run out. One squad member suffered severe frostbite to her foot last week and is bedridden inside. I do not know who you are, but the ammunition you sent is genuine military ordnance. Civilian traders in Jiangcheng cannot get hold of this production batch. Jiang Huai read through the message carefully. She had not suddenly grown trusting of him out of nowhere. She had run her own risk assessment. Anyone capable of supplying standard military ammo was highly unlikely to belong to the White Wolf Raiders gang, who trafficked shoddy black market rounds of mismatched calibers. Every batch of ammo she had purchased from the platform, which Jiang Huai had reviewed in her logs, originated from official military arsenals. She could tell the difference at a glance. He typed a response. Your compound is surrounded by raiders. It was a statement, not a question. He continued typing. A large group of them. The panel flickered once. Cold Snow's reply contained only 2 words, stripped of her usual guarded defensiveness, as if a heavy door had creaked open a tiny crack. Many. Jiang Huai set his enamel mug down on the stainless steel tabletop with a soft clink. Qi retraced the abandoned military camp's outline on his map, adding labels for patrol routes, the chimney stack, and the spot where bandages hung to dry. Jiang Huai stared at the sharply defined circled zone on the parchment. 6 soldiers, besieged by 12 to 15 hostiles for 41 days. The trade platform remained her only open supply lifeline. He opened the private message window and typed a line to Cold Snow, saving it as a draft without sending it yet. This does not have to be limited to one-off trades. Then he leaned back against his chair to wait, not for her reply, but for dawn to break. Dawn broke when Jiang Huai received Han Shua's 4th private message. It was not a reply to the draft message he'd typed and saved the night before. He hadn't even sent it yet. She'd reached out to him of her own accord, the first time she'd ever initiated contact. You had something to say last night. Jiang Huai dumped the cold water from his enamel mug and refilled it with hot steam. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. I did. But talking about it last night would have been pointless. Why? You hadn't trusted me then. What about now? Silence stretched on the other end for roughly 2 minutes. Then Han Shui began typing, not just 2 or 3 lines, but paragraph after paragraph, as if a locked door had swung wide open and everything trapped inside had rushed out all at once. My name is Han Shui, Lieutenant of the Logistics Division under Jiangcheng Military Sub-District Command. On the first day of the extreme cold snap, our unit was tasked with a supply transfer mission outside the city. The road back into town froze solid. The leading major took the main force north to retreat, ordering me to stay behind with a squad to guard the transit warehouse. The next day, the warehouse collapsed under the weight of a blizzard. I led the remaining troops to take shelter in an abandoned military barracks. 6 soldiers total, 3 women, 3 men. The youngest is 20, the oldest 37. For the first 3 weeks of the freeze, we still received encrypted communications from the military sub-district headquarters. Command told us they were pulling back south and ordered us to hold our position and wait. All contact cut off in the 4th week. We have no idea if headquarters was wiped out or if we drifted outside their signal coverage. The outsiders out there call themselves the White Wolf Gang. They first surfaced around the 2nd week of the cold. At first, they only stole supplies, then they started laying siege. They never launched full assaults, they just camped out around us. If we ventured out to scavenge for provisions, they'd open fire. If we stayed holed up, they'd keep watch. Last week we attempted a breakout. 2 men were wounded, we burned through a third of our ammunition, and only 3 tubes of frostbite ointment remain. Jiang Huai did not interrupt her. He jotted down every detail she shared in his notebook. The name White Wolf Gang had popped up before in his platform intelligence monitor. Their purchase records consisted of low-grade firearms, shoddy fuel, and mass quantities of disposable lighters. They were no formal military unit, just armed displaced survivors, but their numbers kept growing. How many of them are there? Jiang Huai asked. At least 12 patrolling the outer perimeter. There may be more. They have a base 3 kilometers east of the barracks, an abandoned logistics transfer station. A detachment stays posted there to guard the stockroom. Do they follow a regular supply cycle? What cycle? Patrol shift change times. How often supply vehicles arrive. Fluctuations in the number of guards posted at the warehouse. Han Shui paused for about 10 seconds. How do you know they operate on a supply schedule? Anyone who needs to eat runs on a supply schedule. Jiang Huai spread the hand-drawn map Qi had drafted across the table. 12 people cannot survive over 40 days solely by scavenging scraps. They have a steady supply line, and every supply line runs on a fixed timetable, and every timetable has its weakest window. Gu Xiaoyu walked over from the medical ward carrying 2 mugs of hot water. She set one down beside Jiang Huai and kept the other for herself. She glanced over the messages Han Shui had sent on the panel: 6 soldiers, 2 wounded, then set her mug aside. You're planning to go there? Not necessarily. Jiang Huai circled the abandoned logistics transfer station on the map. First we map out their full schedule. Gu Xiaoyu said nothing, leaning against the doorframe to sip her water. The system panel lit up again with Han Shui's reply. Patrol shifts rotate every 6 hours. The White Wolf Gang's firearms are a mismatched hodgepodge: shotguns, homemade crude guns, a handful of standard-issue pistols. I can't confirm their exact supply rhythm, but every week the outer patrol detail drops by 2 or 3 men for 2 days straight, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Jiang Huai scribbled 4 words in his notebook: Wednesday, Saturday. He glanced up at Chi, who'd already marked the logistics station's location on the map without needing to be told. When you attempted your breakout last week, which direction did you push out? The main gate east. Their overlapping patrol crossfire zone. They forced you back. They forced us back. That's exactly why you failed. You charged straight through the sector they watch most closely. Jiang Huai traced a line across the map, not toward the east, but the north. A frozen drainage ditch ran along the northern edge of the abandoned barracks, marked with a dotted line on a cheese drawing. Dotted meant he'd not ventured inside to scout it. Take a different route. Circle out through the drainage channel. They'll mass all their manpower to block you to the east, leaving the north undermanned. Strike fast, then pull back immediately. We only need 30 seconds. What can you accomplish in 30 seconds? 30 seconds is more than enough time for me to clear out every last stockpile in their warehouse. Silence settled over the chat window on the other side. Jiang Huai did not press for a response. He compiled all the information they'd exchanged into a concise analysis and sent it to her. White Wolf Gang profile. Manpower: 12 to 15 perimeter patrols, estimated total force of 20 to 30 members. Armament: assorted civilian firearms, no heavy weaponry. Base: abandoned logistics transfer station. Supply cycle: deliveries arrive every Wednesday and Saturday. Guard presence hits its weekly low during daytime hours on these 2 days. Tactics: avoid direct assaults, rely on prolonged siege to starve Han Shui's squad into submission. Motive: forced surrender or wait for the squad to perish before looting their full set of military arms and gear. 6 complete military loadouts are worth waiting over 40 days for. 5 minutes later, Han Shui sent a 5-word reply. How could you figure all this out? Your platform purchase logs, a cheese map, plus 2 hours of cross-referencing intelligence. Who is a Chi? My scout runner. His handwriting's terrible, but his field intel is reliable. Gu Xiaoyu's lips twitched into a faint smile beside him. A Chi shouted from the doorway, Brother Huai, my handwriting's way better than it was last month. Han Shui's next message popped up. You said this wouldn't just be a simple trade deal. That's correct. How do we cooperate? Jiang Huai had waited over 20 hours for those 4 words, ever since the system panel first flagged Han Shui's linked trade activity early the previous morning. She hadn't asked, what exactly do you want? Or, who are you really? She'd only asked how they could work together. Jiang Huai opened his notebook and scribbled a new line: exchange intelligence and manpower. I hold full data on the White Wolf Gang supply schedule, guard deployments, and stored stockpiles, information you lack. You command 6 serviceable firearms and 6 trained shooters, assets I don't possess. Combine our strengths and strike this Wednesday. After he sent the message, Han Shui's reply took an unusually long time to arrive, so long Jiang Huai suspected her connection had dropped.